Hey guys. This is part 22 of What If Naruto Was Sealed and Woke Up After 2,000 Years. Hit like and subscribe if you like this one, and also please check the author in the description. Let's start.
We are pain, that's all. We are God.
Chapter 54. Helping hands should not be smacked. Location: the Normandy. So, said Naruto as he sat down beside Musashi at the bar, are we finally going to have that talk? The former cop looked up from his cup of sake. There was a jug within easy reach. What talk? He asked. The talk about what the shadow broker said just before we killed him. You know, the one where we talk about the fact that he claimed you were the demon of Torfan. Oh, that talk. He nodded and replied, yeah, that talk. Musashi didn't say anything back to that. He emptied his cup and then promptly refilled it from the jug. This went on for another 5 minutes or so before Naruto finally said, either we have the talk or you don't get any more sake. You would go after a man's drink? Saiken asked in suggested horror. How could you even think of doing such a thing? Have you no heart? Aisabu rolled his single eye. Translation: he approves. The Rokubi turned his attention to the turtle and glared. You don't have to ruin my fun, Aisabu. Hey, just because that one Jinchuriki of yours was a lush, we agreed to never speak of him again. Musashi didn't look that put off by the threat. I'll just get another drink to pour down my throat. And I'll kick you out of the bar until I hide all the drinks, Naruto retorted. Don't think I won't. He sighed in irritation. Come on, Musashi. Talk to me. What's there to talk about? He asked, getting a little irritated. So I'm the demon of Torfan. And Kojiro is the saint of Elysium. It wasn't that hard to put together after learning the truth from the shadow broker. Musashi didn't bother to look surprised or try to protest his words. He just went straight for what does it matter. The blonde looked him in the eye. They would be getting to the truth now, and there wasn't anything that was going to stop that from happening. How about the fact that you've been essentially lying to everyone on this team and this ship? He asked rhetorically. Would that be a good starting point? He tapped the bakken on the counter between them. Or would you rather start with this? How about neither? The ex-cop asked. The shinobi wouldn't have it. Not an option. Pick which one you want to start talking about. We'll go from there. He stared unerringly at his teammate and waited. Musashi tried to focus on his drink, but he could feel Naruto's gaze bearing down on him beyond his shoulder. It was like trying to ignore a hunter or a predator when they've locked onto him and silently proclaiming that there was no point in running. Now, he had seen plenty of hardened men and criminals who could do such a thing. He was one of those men, and he would like to say that he had a healthy resistance to looks like it. But Naruto seemed to be in a class of his own. It was either that or he didn't know when to quit. The presence was still there, staring him down without looking him in the eyes. He tried to ignore it, but it was still there. All right. He finally snapped, unable to take it anymore. I'll talk. Good. It was probably more irritating that he didn't seem smug in winning the silent contest of wills. He just accepted it like nothing had happened. So, would you like to start with the whole identity of the demon of Torfan? No, he said with a shake of his head. This is something that we're going to have to start at the beginning with. What's the beginning? It has to do with this. He tapped the bakken, and my ancestor. I think you might have met him. That really didn't surprise Naruto. If he went back far enough in someone's family tree, there was a probable odd that he had known one of the ancestors. So, was it during the war? Yes. He looked at the blonde, his drink left on the table. Did you ever meet a samurai from the land of iron named Ryanosuke? You're going to have to be a little more specific. That was a common name. He reached for the jug and a spare cup. He was at the bar. He might as well drink. He would have been serving under Okisuke, Lord Mifyun's right-hand man. The jug shook suddenly as his hand jerked in surprise. Wait, that Ryanosuke? The self-proclaimed punk samurai? The guy who had the most ridiculous haircut I had ever seen and was more concerned about it not getting cut off than losing his life. Him? He demanded. Musashi looked a little uncomfortable. I didn't know about the bit about the hair, but yes, him. So you knew him? Of course I knew him. That guy had a chip on his shoulder that could rival the Hokage mountain in size and an ego to match. The other samurai kept calling him the hothead or the little idiot. He was so damn eager for battle that he would just charge straight in. That's what got him impaled by the Shinju when Obito decided to set it loose in the land of water. The last I heard of him, he was in critical condition and it wasn't looking like he would survive. Well, he did. They had managed to get the large shard of the Shinju left in his hip out, but it left him with a limp for the rest of his life. Not only that, but his sword had been shattered in the process. The other samurai held him in contempt for it. Naruto scoffed, completely unapologetic. I can't say that I blame them. I know what a sword means to the samurai. So did he, and he was devastated. He made a solemn oath to redeem his failures. Since he had lost his sword recklessly, he swore he would never wield another one, only a bakken. So he made a bakken out of the one thing he felt was right. A wave of apprehension filled the blonde as he looked down at the bakken. You can't possibly. He didn't finish his question because it was practically impossible to ask it. It just did not compute in his head. But Musashi nodded. Yes, I do. He reached out and grasped the bakken by its hilt with a reverent touch. This bakken is the only remaining proof that the Shinju had ever existed. He carried it everywhere he went, and it was the only weapon he wielded when he and the other samurai joined Sasuke's march. Wait, he fought in the War of Three Flags? Yes, and he was completely different than before. Even Sasuke Uchiha had wrote that Ryunosuke was different, being quiet when he had been loud and thoughtful instead of reckless. His skill and strength in wielding the bakken helped lead them to victory. It also earned him the respect of the samurai and shinobi. They started to call him the Mokusei no Ryu, Wooden Dragon. When the war was ended, because of his skill with the bakken and for the fact that he had defeated the Iron King's champion in single combat, the Empire gave him a gift of a odachi forged from their finest steel. While he accepted the weapon, he remained true to his vow and only wielded the bakken. Naruto was a little spellbound by the storytelling, but when it came to that last part, he made a connection. Let me guess, those two weapons were passed down through the generations? Musashi nodded again. When he finally settled down and started a family, yes. That family grew into a clan that became famous for producing people with top-quality skill with the blade. Each generation, the clan head would either pick the odachi or the bakken. Okay, what does that have to do with you being the demon? I'm getting there, hold on, Musashi told him. Look, if it helps, I'll skip the majority of the details and give you the basics. That would be good. My father was the youngest child of the clan head. He didn't get either the odachi or the bakken. He had passing talent as a samurai, but he was more content with sleeping around with women. He had a personal favorite, a woman named Amaya. Even when he became married to a woman named Keiko, he still slept with Amaya. Naruto's eyebrow rose at those words. He cheated on his wife? And she didn't do anything about it? He didn't believe that the lady would be kept in the dark. She would have figured it out sooner or later, and if it was later, that was worse. No, she knew about it. In fact, she had no problems about it. That hadn't been the answer he was expecting. Say what? She knew about him sleeping with Amaya and was fine with it. She had even joined them more than a couple of times if the stories are right. He noticed Naruto's expression. The thing is, he explained, Amaya and Keiko were good friends and had no problems sharing my father. The only thing they didn't like him doing was sleeping with other women. Say what you will about my father, I really can't since I didn't know him, Naruto interjected. He gave the blonde a look before continuing. Say what you will about him, but they managed to make him faithful. Anyway, he managed to get them pregnant at the same time, and they even found out that they had the same due date. On the day they were to give birth, several things happened. The clan was attacked, and while it had fended off the attackers, the clan head and the majority of the heirs were killed, which meant that my father was the new clan head. Another thing was that someone tried to burn down the hospital where Amaya and Keiko were at with their newborn sons. No one was injured, but the records had been burned to cinders, which included the exact time of birth for each son. I think I know where this is going, Kokuo proclaimed. And I don't think that it is going to end well. Naruto had that same feeling, but he wouldn't make any decisions until he heard the entire story. But there was something he did notice that didn't compute with the projected end of the story. So Keiko's son would eventually become the next clan head, right? Technically speaking, yes, Musashi said, reaching for the jug. It was coming up to the point of the story where drinks were going to be needed for him, and in abundance. What does technically speaking mean? The clan has a law about succession, that is the firstborn is the heir apparent. Yeah, and? He gave the blonde a pointed look. Firstborn, not first trueborn son, he explained. Normally it would mean what you thought it means, but if someone played fast and loose with it, a bastard would become the clan head because he was born first. He took a long swig of his sake. It's happened before, some for good and some for bad. Naruto saw what he was getting at. And since no one had the records of who was born, Amaya could have tried to push her son to be the heir? Yep, he said shortly. But couldn't the doctors who helped with the births compare their notes and find out who came first? One of them died in his sleep before the actual issue rose. The other went off to be a doctor on a colony planet, and the clan never heard from him again. Oh, that would be a problem. He nodded. It was. But didn't you say that Amaya and Keiko were good friends? That question was answered with a scoff. When you've got the chance to be the mother of the next clan head, a friendship can go shoot itself. They went from the best of the friends to the bitterest of enemies. It also didn't help that the rest of the clan took sides on it too. One side started calling itself Blades and the other Woods. Oh, that's just begging for a bad joke, Shikaki declared. Yeah, Isaba said, his head bobbing in agreement, and not just one bad joke. It'd be more like a slew of them. Naruto, you should. No, the blonde said instantly. Oh, come on. No. I'm not asking him jokes about his family. That got me kicked out of the Earth Daimyo's palace for the entirety of the visit. I'm with him on this one, Kurama said, throwing his support behind his Jinchuriki. He remembered that diplomatic mission and it almost didn't end well because of the stupid question Naruto asked the Earth Daimyo. Of course you would. Leave it alone, Shikaku, Naruto ordered. What did your father think of all this? Musashi snorted at that, almost spilling his drink in the process. I don't think he even noticed that it was happening. He was so focused on making sure that he was a good clan head that he didn't realize that the clan was practically tearing itself at the seams, picking sides. There was really nothing he could say to that. So which one were you? The bastard or the trueborn? He asked. Musashi took a swig from his cup, emptying it completely. Why don't you take a guess? He grimaced. Really? He asked. You're doing that? Just take a guess. He was smirking amusedly. This must have been something he had done to everyone who managed to get his life story out of him. Ugh, fine, Naruto said with a sigh that was both irritated and surrendering. You were the trueborn. He didn't hesitate when he asked, what makes you say that? Between the two of you, you seem to be better suited to it. Granted, he only knew Kojiro in passing and only because he was Aria's bodyguard, but still. And you would be wrong. He paused and looked at Musashi for a long moment. You're the bastard? No, he's the caterer's son, Komiai replied, completely sarcastic. Of course, he's the bastard. He practically spelled it out for you. I know that already, he retorted. You don't need to slam my face into it. Yes, I'm the bastard, Musashi answered. Kojiro is the trueborn. While that wasn't what he was expecting to hear, he still went with it. I guess that it wasn't fun growing up in that household. You and Kojiro must have gotten a lot of fights. Actually, I didn't meet him in person until we were both in the military. Even then it took us a while to figure out who we were. What? How is that even possible? He demanded. You lived in the same house. You have the same father. But we were raised by our mothers and kept away from each other. My father died when I was 10 and the next 8 years was nothing but making sure that I was the best choice to become the next clan head. My mother hounded me about it, making sure that I was the best at everything. I got punished if what I was less than perfect. I got so sick of it that when the day the clan would decide who the next head became, I skipped out and joined the military, taking the Bakken with me. To get back at my mother, I took her name. As it turns out, Kojiro had the same idea, just with the Odachi. It took you 8 years to get out of there. That just sounded so stupid to him. I wouldn't have lasted a year before trying to get away. Musashi put the cup down a little harder than he usually did. To the shinobi, it looked like he was trying not to slam it down. It was the only home I knew, Commander. The only way I thought that I could get was through the military, and the only way I could do that was when I turned 18. He rolled his eyes at that and drank from his cup. And that by itself is a little dumb. He turned quiet, and his eyes hardened. His hand started reaching for the Bakken. You think kids should go out to war? Naruto turned his attention to him and saw the look in his eyes. I didn't say that. I'm saying that be able to join at 18 is a little too old. I'd set it lower about 2 years. Not any lower? He asked challengingly. He glared back. Don't patronize me, Musashi. I read about what happened at Enreikyo. I was a child solider myself. He stopped himself before his voice could escalate into a shout and they get into a fight. Look, just go back to what you were talking about. You were getting to the part about the whole saint and demon thing. That wasn't where it started. Everything happened at the Lorik recovery. I had just joined the Marines. Kojiro was in the same squad as I was and we were the newbies on the squad. We watched each other's backs during that recovery, and we both managed to keep the other alive throughout. You became friends. Yeah, good ones, he acknowledged. Elysium? The blonde asked him. We were there, we fought together at the northern defenses when the breach happened and held them off. I thought there was only one person who was sealed the breach. He snorted in derision. The history books lied. We both sealed the breach, fighting together. What we didn't know then that there was a clan member on Elysium who recognized us both. He was also a blade and made it known that it was Kojiro who held the breach alone. That was when we both found about the other. Needless to say, even though we tried to get past it, things got a little tense between us. And then we got to Torfan. He reached for his cup and drank hard. Naruto waited for him to finish before asking what happened on Torfan. We got vicious on that moon, attacking and killing everything that was a Batarian or wearing a Batarian banner proudly. I started to grow sick of it, but Kojiro enjoyed it. He would kill every Batarian he could get his hands on, even if they were surrendering to us. That and the fact that we were both potential heirs to one of the most powerful clans in the Land of Iron made us both argue and fight with the other. It came to a head when he came up with that damn plan. What plan? The plan that got me named the Demon of Torfan. He frowned, trying to piece the picture together. Wait, if he's the one who made the plan, how are you the one who got the moniker? Every hero needs a villain? He suggested a little sarcastically. Naruto didn't buy it. It never would be that cliché or dumb. Be serious, Musashi. It was that clan member, but I was partially to blame. The plan got 3/4 of our unit wiped out, taking a Batarian stronghold. Kojiro and I argued over it before it was put into play. I denounced it as something that would get us all killed, and he rejected the notion, saying that we had to do everything to put down the monsters. If our CO hadn't pulled us apart, we probably would have drawn our weapons and attacked each other. The CO put me on the mission and had Kojiro stay back. Why? Supposedly, to make sure that our supply train was still coming in. He scrunched up his face in disgust. What complete and utter bullshit. That's got to be one of the most pathetic lies I've heard. Why would he do something like that? When the truth came out, Kojiro was seen as a rising star in the military. The CO didn't want to be the one that got him killed. So the plan went ahead, and even though it was successful, it got most of the unit killed. I would have been one of them if Kojiro hadn't pulled me out to safety. While we both watched the stronghold burn to nothing, I told him to get away from there so that I would take the blame. You actually did for him. After the two of you fought? He nodded. His hand was no longer around the cup. I never really wanted to be the clan head. That was his, and it was rightfully so. But I knew that if word had gotten out about what he had planned and what happened because of it, it would taint him and the idea of the saint. So I paid him back for saving me and took the fall. He paused for a moment, and then said, he got back at me for doing that. Why? Naruto asked. It didn't make sense to get back at a guy who threw himself on the sword so he wouldn't have to. I don't know, maybe just to rub my nose in it. After the court-martial that followed and I was exonerated, I retired to CCC. I soon found out that same clan member that had discovered us and did everything he could to deify Kojiro was found dead. The reports regarding both Elysium and Torfan had been hacked and our names had been deleted, leaving only the titles. And then he joined Arya. Right after leaving the military, he confirmed with a nod. He remembered the confusion of wondering why his half-brother had done that, why he had given up a career in the military and running the clan for doing bodyguard work for one of the most infamous criminals in the galaxy. He didn't wonder for long, since there wasn't really a point to it at the time. There still wasn't one. So, anything else you'd like to know about? Who I prefer to sleep with? He asked with a little bit of sarcasm. No, you can keep that yourself. Then we're done here, he declared, going back to his drink. He was on his way to a nice buzz before the blonde came in, and he was still intent on getting there. Hold on, Musashi. I didn't say that I was done. I'm done. He watched the man go back to his drinking. He wasn't going to budge. All right, the shinobi said, I'll leave it be for now. But we're coming back to this. Whatever, he said with a wave of his hand, more intent on the drink. Well, that was informative, Gyuki remarked as Naruto left the bar behind. Sun nodded his head in agreement. We got something out of him. More like we dragged it out of him, Komi declared. What's with this wee stuff? Naruto demanded. I was the one who did all the talking and prodding. Yes, but we were there for emotional support, Shikaka told him assuredly. Is that what's it called? He stepped out in the hallway. The few crewmen that passed him gave him a silent salute and moved on. Got something on your mind, Gaki? Kurama asked him, trying to figure out where Thane put himself. He had forgotten to ask about that piece of information when they had gotten back to the Normandy. The fox shrugged his shoulders and shifted his tails loosely. Can't help you there, he answered. I know that. You were the one to ask. You know, you could just ask Edi, Saiken pointed out to him. He paused and considered the option. Good point, he conceded. He probably should have thought of that first. Edi, where is Thane? Mr. Krios is in the lift support control room, the AI answered him. Thanks. He knew where that was. Like Edi had said, Thane was in the life support control room. He sat in the chair at the desk, but he wasn't writing anything or looking up something on the computer when Naruto walked in. He just stared pensively out the window. Do you need something, Commander? He asked without turning his head to look at who it was. The shinobi was a little surprised that he knew that it was him, but he didn't let show on his face. How did you know it was me? He asked back as he walked up to the desk. In all of my years, you are the only one who is able to walk up to me with a confidence born of trust. It echoes in your footsteps. He couldn't help but look down at his feet at those words. I didn't know I walked that loudly. And I'm a shinobi. The Drell turned his head to look at him, and there was a small hint of a smile on his face. It's not hearing the sense that you know of. And that makes even less sense, he thought to himself. Hey, do you have a minute to have a talk? Certainly, he answered without hesitation. We haven't had a chance since I joined. Yeah, that's on me. Look, I don't know how much of what we're going to be talking about will be something that we've already talked about. So if you don't want to answer any of my questions, just tell me. I do not believe that I will have a problem with your questions. I think that they will come easier than they had before. So that meant they did have a talk before. That was something. So you said that you had something that was killing you? Yes. You don't have to worry about the rest of the crew. My illness is not communicable, even to other Drell. It's an illness? Not some old wound. He nodded briefly. It's called Keppel syndrome. Naruto didn't know who Keppel was or what he did to deserve an illness named after him. Have you gone to the medbay? He asked. Dr. Chukwas can have a look at you and see if there's anything she can do. No, thank you. It's being attended to. If the finest medical minds in the Hanner Illuminated Primacy can't solve the problem, I doubt your ship's medic could. We have chakra. I do not believe that the Alliance, or even the Akatsuki, will allow that to happen. Thank you for your concern, though. He must have seen the slight disbelief on Naruto's face. Trust me. This won't affect my performance. Okay. There was nothing he could. It's not like he could just drag the Drell up to the medical bay. What about your praying? I didn't think people outside of monks prayed for the dead, not even those they've killed. And by the way, who do you pray to? That depends on the circumstance, he told him. To find my target, I speak with Amankira, Lord of Hunters. When I act to defend another, Erishu, Goddess of Motherhood and Protection. And when I haven taken my target, I speak with Kalahira, Goddess of Oceans and the Afterlife. That's a lot of gods, Naruto noted. He only really knew of one god when he was growing up, Kami. There wasn't a lot of formal praying to Kami, more like casual prayers and swearing, especially during the war. It's one of our older beliefs. Many embrace the Hanner and Kindlers now, or the Asari philosophies. The old ways are dying, he said with a hint of sadness in his tone. There are so many ways to interpret one's place in the universe. Who needs the wisdom of our ancestors? The younger generations don't believe they can help us fathom genetic engineering, orbital strikes, or alien races. Then they're idiots, the shinobi declared without missing a beat. They didn't get to where they are now without their ancestors. Those who forget the past are doomed to repeat it, he quoted. There was a reason he knew that quote, and why it was in the Academy's history class. Thane looked somewhat impassive. But there was a slight smile on his lips. I am glad that you see it that way. It's a small reassurance. Yeah, well, there's also the fact that I am one of those ancestors. If you had talked to me 2,000 years ago, I would have told you that spaceflight or other races was ridiculous. Then again, I would have been too busy focusing on the war to even think about that. There's also the fact that he's an alien, Saiken pointed out. If he had come down to you humans 2,000 years ago to tell you of what was to come, you would have had him knocked out, thrown into a lab to be prodded and tested on, before tossing him into an interrogation to be pumped for information. And it would be a miracle if he lived after all of that. Naruto considered the slug's words. It probably showed just how much less of an idealist he was that he agreed with them. But he wasn't going to say that to Thane. He was a bit of a cynic, not an idiot. I don't think oceans and the afterlife go together, Thane, he told the Drell. That's because to you, the afterlife is the inside of the Shinigami's stomach, Kurama said bluntly. Thane didn't look offended by the blonde's remark. Consider, he began. The ocean is full of life. Yet it is not life as you and I know it. To survive there, we must release our grip on land. Accept a new way to live. So it is with the death. The soul must accept its departure from the body. If it can't, it will be lost. There was a silence in the room as Naruto considered his words. That's a new way of looking at it, he admitted. How do you see death? What do you mean? I speak to Kalahira. Who do you speak to when someone that you know has passed on? Oh. The blonde thought about it before answering. If I'm honest, I don't really talk to anyone when someone dies. I already know that death is there. During the war, it just became a fact, one that we couldn't ignore. So you know it and acknowledge it, but you do not allow yourself to grieve for the loss? He shook his head. I didn't say that. We lost a lot of people during the war. It hardly seemed like a day went past that we didn't find out that someone that we had known, either casually or more so, had died because of the war. There wasn't really any time to mourn their passing. There was a quick funeral, but we'd go right back to the war. We always told ourselves that we would have time to grieve later, but that time never really came until it would smack us in the face. The only time during the war I allowed myself to grieve was when we had been taken by Obito. By which you mean when you got back to the village, you went to your apartment, locked the door, and proceeded to tear the place apart, screaming all the while before collapsing in the middle of it, sobbing like a baby? Kurama asked him. Yes, that, he answered. He could still feel the sting of B's loss, along with everyone else. Thank you ever so much for bringing that up. That is a sad thing, Thane told him. For a moment, Naruto thought he was talking about what the fox had said. But then he realized that he was still talking about what he had said. I know. But it was all we could do then. I just hoped that when the war did end, they had that time to mourn. I would bet 10 that they threw a big party for you, Shikaku declared. I'll take that bet, Gyuki replied. Their Jinchuriki mentally rolled his eyes at them. If you don't mind me saying, he said to Thane, you don't seem like a regular assassin. You've spent too much time fighting thugs who think custom-plated armor makes them professional. I've also fought against people who would make you wet yourself. That may be, but that was a long time ago. The Hanner trained my body for this role since I was 6 years old. Wait, the Hanner? The incredibly polite jellyfish on land? Call the Protheans the Enkindlers and worship them as gods? Those Hanner? He asked. Yes. Huh, all kinds, I guess. It just went to show that everyone and every kind of race out in the galaxy had that darker side to them. You are not surprised, Thane noted. All kinds, he repeated. It's not surprising. Everyone has a something to train assassins. True. The Hanner are only unusual in that they need other species to do the killing for them. They have a strong grip, and natural toxins. But have you ever seen one move quickly out of water or fire a gun? No, but I'd figured it was something that would be amusing. Do not say that to the more militaristic Hanner. Naruto found the idea of a militaristic Hanner funny. A giggle came up his throat and almost came out if he hadn't clamped down on his mouth. He kept it there until the giggle died down. Once he was sure that it was gone, he pulled his hand away. Sorry about that. I do not take offense, Thane told him. There was nothing that said he either thought it was funny too or was displeased. Moving on, you've been killing people since you were 6? Even for him, an old school, really old school to some people, shinobi, that was a bit much. The only time he had ever known that someone that young who went to the killing was Kakashi. Of course not, the Drell said. I didn't make my first kill until I was 12. That made more sense to him. It was much closer to when he became a genin. He didn't know what being a shinobi fully meant then. Still, it seemed better to him that Thane had been 12 when he first killed. Alright, continue. They were training me. I was not to be used and thrown away. I was an investment. He frowned at that description. Even if there were children being trained in the academy, they were treated like people, not like objects. That's harsh, he declared. Thane looked at him closely, trying to see what the meaning was behind his words. When he found it, he said, I've given you the wrong impression. They valued me. Yes, as a resource. But also as a person. They regretted their need for me. And your parents were just fine with this? He couldn't see that happening. Every kid that went to the academy went of their own choice. If they said no, they weren't forced to go. He's not a shinobi, Naruto, Matatabi reminded. He's not even human. They probably do something differently. As if he had heard the cat, Thane told him, the agreement was made under the compact. It was an honor for our family. The compact, what's that? We live on the Hanner homeworld because they rescued us, some of us, from extinction. We owe them our lives. That is the compact. And your race was going extinct, why? Overpopulation, he answered swiftly. That must sound trite to you. Humans developed mass effect drive before the problem became acute. But that didn't happen with you guys? What gave it away? Asked a sarcastic Shikaku. I wasn't talking to you, Shikaku, he responded. So stop while you still have a chance. The Tanuki glowered but did as he was told. Our homeworld, Rakana, had few resources, Thane explained. We hadn't even developed fusion power when the soil began to fail from overuse and pollution. Fusion? He started to ask with a slightly puzzled look. He stopped before he did. It wouldn't be of any point. Never mind, continue. The Hanner found us a century ago. They sent hundreds of ships. Evacuated thousands of us. Billions more had to be left behind. And Rakura now? Asked the blonde. It died, he replied. Those who were left helped further its death by slaughtering each other for mouthfuls of water or crumbs of food. Oh geez, Naruto couldn't help but think. That just painted an image in his mind that he didn't want. To him, it sounded like Obito having won the war, choosing to bring it an inch before ruination, and then watching while humanity tore itself trying to survive, only to bring themselves over that inch. He didn't want to think about it, but it was right there, in front of his eyes now. Help, I can't stop thinking about it. Just keep talking, Gyuki suggested. That was a good idea. It was something that he could work with. What's the compact, exactly? There are many things the Hanner can't do, even with mechanical aid, Thane explained. They asked Drell to assist them. But, isn't that slavery? He had gotten a harsh hatred of slaving and slavers during the war, having found one too many slave auction houses or prisons full of them. While it had always been in the elemental countries, despite attempts to end it long before he had even been born, slavery had become rampant during the war. There were days he thought he was fighting the slavers just as much as Obito. But as soon as he asked the question, Thane frowned. It wasn't much of a frown, but there was a feeling in the air that it was much worse than first thought. Don't insult me, Commander. Anyone can refuse to serve. Few do. We owe our existence to the Hanner. We are proud to repay the debt. You say that, but the way you talk about the Hanner makes them sound a little pathetic, like they're completely weak. Out here they are. But if you could see them in the encompassing, the oceans of Kaj, you would see them differently. He paused, like he was taking a breath or remembering a memory. A stream of silver in the dark. Looping, diving, so fast the eye can't follow. Laughter like the squeals of a child vibrates the water. They fly over the black of the seabed, like birds plumed with the light of heaven. Whoa, that sounds pretty poetic. Thank you. And so, the Drell live on the homeworld of the Hanner then? Yes. I know many think the Hanner difficult to understand. It's just they're very formal with those they don't know. We know them quite well. If you ever get close to a Hana that they tell you their soul name, you would find them warm. Soul name? Repeated Naruto, obviously confused. What's that? The Drell looked momentarily confused. He searched the human's face, trying to find something akin to an answer there. But then the confusion cleared. Forgive me. I forget that you do not know Hana customs that well. There was a snarky comment just waiting to be said at that. But the blonde didn't allow it to come up. Instead he forced it down and said, "Could you tell me?" "Of course," Thane said easily. To the Hana, there are 2 names to each of them. The one most commonly used while amidst strangers and people they would barely know is what you would call their face name. They tend to describe the Hana, and what they are in their life. A memory came to Naruto. It was when he still walked on the citadel. He had just gotten the tattoos on his back and been wandering around the Presidium. While he was wandering, he had run into a Hana preaching his religion and helped it get out of a bit of trouble with CCC. Would preaching the word of the Enkindlers be a face name? He asked. Yes, it would. You know the name but not what it means. He shrugged his shoulders. I ran into a religious Hana on the citadel. In all honesty, I didn't think of him until now. So, the soul name? That is much different. It is only known to close friends and family. They also tend to be quite poetic. If that's the case, how would you know it then? Most of my commissions were for Hana. I grew close to my regular contacts. Ah, that would explain it, he thought to himself. It made sense to him, somewhat. It was a little weird since he was taught to keep it professional, but he could understand it. Hang on, he said aloud when he realized something. Don't the Hana speak with blinking lights or something? That might be the first time I've ever heard it put like that, Thane remarked. I'll say, Saiken said with a small groan. You have an amazing ability to be blunt, Naruto. Thanks. It wasn't a compliment. I'll still take it. Why do you even care? Matatabi asked the slug. I can commiserate. You're a slug. That's just a jellyfish on land. No, it's not. But yes, the Drell continued to say, the Hana use bioluminescence to communicate. While it can be a challenge, many Drell have had their eyes genetically modified to perceive their higher frequency flashes. I had the treatment. I can't tell the difference between a dark red and black, but I can see the ultraviolet light as a silver color. That would explain why he saw silver under an ocean, Isabus said knowingly. That's not a color you would see in an ocean, not unless something was shining down on it. How would? Naruto started to ask, only to stop himself. Never mind, stupid question. Thanks for the recognition. Could we get back on topic here, please? Koko asked. Naruto, don't you have more questions to ask? That he did, and he knew which one to ask. But you don't work for the Hana anymore, right? If he had been, he probably wouldn't have been going after Nasuna. The Drell nodded. That is correct. He made it sound simple, almost too simple. What happened? I was asleep for a long time, yes. I paid no attention to what my body was asked to do. But then, he paused again, his eyes glazing over and his body going stiff. Naruto got the feeling that this was a usual thing for him. True enough, he started talking like before. Laser dot trembles on his skull. One finger twitch, he dies. Then the smell of spice on the spring wind. Sunset-colored eyes defiant in the scope. The laser dances away. He stopped, and his body relaxed. My apologies. Drell slip into memories so easily. No problem, the shinobi replied. He wasn't sure what he could see. If anything, he had felt like he had intruded on something private. So, do you have perfect memory or something? Yes, Thane answered without shame. We can relive any moment in our lives with perfect clarity. It's difficult to control at times. Some of us disappear into, let's call it solipsism. And what's that supposed to mean? The fox sighed. I swear, would it kill you to open a medical textbook? It's not like they're going to bite you. Hey, Sakura was the medic, not me, he protested. And what does me not reading a medical book have to do with what he's talking about? It just might be a medical condition. Or a mental problem, suggested Isabu. How about we let him explain it? Matatabi offered. I'm with the cat on this one, Naruto said. Can you explain that? He asked Thane. When a memory feels as real as life, it's as valid as life. Thinking about a moment brings back the smell of cut grass, the warmth of another's hand on yours, the taste of another's tongue in your mouth. Wouldn't you rather lose yourself in such a memory than spend the night alone, staring at the walls of metal and plastic? I might have, but what you just described sounds like a personal memory. Of course it is, it was the first time my wife and I. Stop right there, he said instantly, throwing his hand out. I don't need to know the details, thank you. The Drell looked confused for a moment. Ah, he finally said in realization. I had forgotten how prudish you can be at times, even more so considering your teachers. Oh, for the love of Kami, will you people stop holding Kakashi and Jiraiya against me? They are never going to stop doing that so long as you are alive, Kurama told him. You might as well get over it. Thane didn't look at all fazed by the outburst. If you are done. Naruto deflated at those words. They were short, cool, and practical. It knocked him out of his rant before he could even start ranting. Sorry, he apologized, I just really don't like it when people do that to me. It's alright. You said as much when we talked before? It was a little weird to hear him say that, even if he had accepted the fact that they had met before. There were a lot of questions that the blonde wanted to ask about that subject, like how did they meet, how long did they work together, and what they were doing. But they would get there in time. For now, he had to get to know the Drell again. If you can relive memories, isn't there a chance you can relive bad ones? Of course, Thane answered honestly. Remembering the times I've taken bullets is unpleasant. But I can look at my knee and see it's not shattered. The memories that are hard to escape are those of despair. Yeah, he agreed, those are the bad ones. While he didn't have perfect clarity, the bad memories had a habit of sneaking up on him and getting his focus when he wasn't on guard. Their favorite time to strike him was when he was trying to sleep, turning his dreams into nightmares. So, you can remember every memory you have perfectly? Nearly, the Drell replied, and I expect that if we remembered the birth trauma, we never recover from it. Ah, good point. But with that near-perfect memory of yours, you can remember every assassination you did? He nodded and said, in perfect detail. Every mistake I made. Every target's last breath. And the guilt, the human added. Guilt? He repeated, testing it on his tongue. No. I never felt any particular guilt about my contracts. My employers killed them. My body was only the tool they used. If you kill a man with a gun, do you hold the gun responsible? There's a difference between you and a gun, Thane. You can choose, the gun can't, Naruto told the Drell. My soul can choose, but my body is merely flesh. Flesh whose reflexes were honed to kill, he replied. Sound like anything you know? Kurama asked his host. He did, going back to Danzo and the root. What Thane was saying to him sounded like a gentler root. But root was still root, no matter how it was prettied up. That's not right, Thane. You control your body, not someone else. How can you even think that in the first place? Do you really have to ask that question when you know what the answer is going to be? Shikaka demanded. He's not human. He probably thinks differently than humans do. Drell minds are different from humans, Thane told him. See? We see our body as a vessel, and accept that it is not always under our control. So you just use that as an excuse to dodge any blame or responsibility that tries to stick to you? He shook his head. Not every action performed by my body is a result of conscious choice. I have taken responsibility for those that are. Humans often believe in a soul distinct from the body. A spirit responsible for moral reasoning that lives on after the body's death. Our belief is just a bit more literal. The blonde couldn't help but smile as he stood there. I'll see your literal belief and raise you 9 distinct souls housed in my body that are more satisfied with trying to drive me crazy instead of providing me with advice or a solution to a problem. Hey! Protested Isabu. We resemble that remark. Shikaka shouted. Gyuki slapped his head. That was the wrong thing to say, Shikaku. No, it was the right thing to say. The Kyubi looked at the Hachibi. Are you really going to try and argue with him? No. Good, I thought you'd forget and try to actually argue with that idiot. Hey! Shikaka protested angrily. Shut up. I wasn't talking to you. Thank you all for proving my point, Naruto told them. It was a good thing that no one else could hear the inside of his head. They'd probably be crushed by the reality of meeting the Biju or just become a head case. You may have me there, Thane conceded with a small flick of his hands. May have? He repeated, looking at the Drell in slight disbelief. He nodded. I have never met the Biju, so I do not know how they live in one's mind. Thank your gods for that. I have to try and make sure they don't get bored, otherwise they take it out on me. He inwardly sent a warning glare to his tenants, silently telling them to not say a thing. Either they took it for what it was supposed to mean, or they were too busy arguing with each other to notice. Again, you may have me there, the assassin agreed. He looked at the Drell with a questioning look. Thane, about that first memory trip during this conversation, did something happen during that mission? Did it have anything to do with Sunset Eyes? Ah. That time. It was all he said before he went stiff and went through the sane memory again. Laser dot trembles on his skull. Smell of spice on the spring wind. Sunset-colored eyes defiant in the scope. He came out of it like it was a normal thing and kept on talking. A bystander noticed my spotting laser and threw herself between me and the target. She couldn't see me, but she stared me down. So that memory of vivid one for? Not. He stopped himself and then started again. No. She was a vivid person. Did you still kill the target? He didn't answer right away, choosing to stare at the desk. Not that day. That silence before the answer was telling to Naruto. What happened that day must have been very important to the Drell. Who did those eyes belong to? Erika, my wife, he answered. That was how I met her. She saw my targeting laser as she walked by and threw herself in the way. I take it that she impressed you. She woke me up. He went stiff, and his eyes glazed over. Her body trembles. Not fear. Indignation. Her mouth moves. How dare you? He snapped out of it as quickly as he had snapped into it. You and I trained to sacrifice ourselves to save others. How often does a civilian step in the way of a bullet to protect someone they've never met? In my experience, they tend to scream and run in the other direction. He smiled briefly. I have known that feeling well too. But in that moment, I thought she was the goddess Erishu. She met my eyes through the scope, and my purpose faltered. That actually sounds a bit romantic, doesn't it? Koko said. Sun shook his head and said, You're such a sap. No more than you. You and Rashi shared more than just a gruff attitude. I remember that you both had a fondness for romantic novels. I probably didn't need to know about that, Naruto said as he ingested the information. He hadn't met Rashi personally, but what he had learned was that the man had been gruff and stubborn, much like his uncle the Sandaime Tsuchikage. Knowing that he liked romantic novels kind of dispelled the image of him in the blonde's head. He chose to ignore it and keep his attention on Thane. So how exactly did she go from being in your scope to being your wife? He asked Thane. I had to meet her. The memory possessed and endowed me. And considering what he had just said about Drell memories, that was probably the actual truth. I fell to my knees before her. Begged her pardon. Just like that? The blonde asked him. Yes. She introduced me to the world beyond my work. Eventually, she forgave me. Later she loved me. And now? He said, even though he had a bad feeling about it. She is dead, and it is my fault. I let myself become complacent. I thought Erika and Kaliat were safe. And Kaliat is your son? Yes. Good to know. He had done something that saved that kind. It was best to know what his name was. Otherwise it might turn out to be very awkward. Please continue. I stayed away too long, and my enemies came for her. I'm sorry. Do you know who it was? Batarians, he answered, a slaver ring that was preying on Hanner outer colonies. I'd killed their leaders. They paid the shadow broker to find out who I was. But they were afraid of me, so they went after her. He felt sad for the Drell. He had seen people lose precious ones in battle. Some of them couldn't cope, some tried, and a few managed to do that. But sometimes it didn't matter, not when they ended up dead in battle too. And afterwards? He asked. Erika woke me up. When she passed, I returned to my battle sleep. My body hunted her killers. Murdered them, he replied with no emotion. I was taught to grant death quickly, cleanly. To minimize suffering. I let them linger. He paused for a moment, and then leaned back in his chair. There is something about you, Naruto. He had a feeling he knew what the Drell was saying. But even so, he still had to ask, what do you mean? Don't play games, Gaki, Kurama rebuked him. You know what he's talking about. You have a quality to make people talk about what they keep hidden. Oh, that, he said. He shrugged his shoulders but also smiled embarrassingly. I get that a lot. It's not something that I worked on. It's just something that I've got. You do not need to apologize for it. In the right hands, it is a gift. And yours are the right hands. I haven't spoken about my wife I don't think I ever have. I didn't have anyone left to tell it to. What about your son? He shook his head. Before you helped us, I had not seen him in the longest time. He was angry with him. Now would probably be the best time to have that question answered, prompted Gyuki. I had the same thought, Naruto agreed. What exactly happened anyway? I had gotten word that Kaliat was on the Citadel, hired by a local criminal to be a hitman. That was not the path I wanted him to walk, so I told you that I was going to the Citadel to find him. You surprised me by saying that you would help me in finding him. We enlisted the services of a CCC officer named Captain Lee to help track down Kaliat. It took some doing, but we managed to track him down and find him just as he was about to execute a Turian named Talid. It had become a standoff between us, him, and the CCC officer who had arrived with support. It would have gotten worse had you not acted. What did I do, slap the kid? He had a bad feeling that was what he had done. No, the Drell told him, making him relieved. You shot a lamp post to distract Kaliat, walked up to him, knocked the gun out of his hand, and then you slapped him. He groaned. Cammy saved me. Do not feel bad for your actions. They were what helped Kaliat in the end. Once it was all over, you had the two of us put a cell so we could talk. It helped us immensely and we were able to part on good terms. That flabbergasted Naruto. You mean after all that you left again? Kaliat was to do community service for what he had attempted to do, and I was still aiding you. Fortunately, he understood. He didn't say anything, but he took the end results as a good thing. He was always glad to see people get back on better terms and would gladly help if he could. That was probably why he had helped in the first place. But another part of the conversation got his attention. What exactly were you aiding me with? I was not sure and I did not ask. From what I took from our time working together, it was a mixture of digging up the past, avoiding people intent on finding you, and killing a few of them in the process. But now, I see the real reason why you hired me. It was an assessment to see if I was good enough to be recruited for this time. Naruto remembered what Kasumi had said to him back on Horizon, back when he confirmed who she was. You really think I did that? He asked Thane. I do. I do not know why though. You and me both, he said with a small grumble. Whatever games he had been playing, or were playing, Cammy was that confusing, he was really getting annoyed with it now. It's exasperating. For some reason, that just made the Drell smile. You said the exact same thing when you met Captain Lee? Why would I? He stopped and thought about it. The name came first and foremost. He's descended from Rock Lee, isn't he? Yes. When he told you of that, your reply was you have the eyebrows to prove it. Oh Naruto, said Matatabi in an admonishing voice. Hey, there was a reason I called him Bushy Brows. He protested. How bushy were his eyebrows? I do not know how humans would judge such a thing, but by your definition, they seem to be very bushy. I believe that since Geras and Musashi worked in CCC, they would know him better than I would. Well, Musashi's currently getting drunk at the bar, he said. So that leaves Geras. Hey Edi, where is Geras? Mr. Vicarian is not aboard the ship, Edi replied. He paused. He's what? Mr. Vicarian is not. Yes, I got that part, Edi. What happened? Did we leave him on Ilium or something? He really hoped that wasn't the case. It was just too stupid to happen. He and Mr. Eric opted to take a ship to the Citadel from Ilium. Why? The team didn't have any business being on the Citadel. They had to stay out where they could find the answers. I am unsure as to why. Damn it. He practically marched towards the door. Get me aligned to Geras at the map. I want to know what's going on. Sorry, Thane, he apologized with a brief look back. The Drell didn't look offended at being blown off like that. Commander, I do not think. I don't want to hear it, Edi. Put me on the horn to Geras when I get to the map. Location, the Citadel. When Eric saw Sidoni sitting there in the orbital lounge, waiting, he did feel anger. But it wasn't consuming him like it was Geras. He also felt the need to know why. Sidoni's had been a part of the team on Omega. He had even helped form it. But when he gave a tip-off to Geras, Musashi, and Eric about the blood pack, the rest of the team had been ambushed by the Blue Suns. When they got back to the hideout, Everyone was dead and Sidonis was gone. Geras had been furious about what had happened. They all were. But it was him who kept searching for Sidonis. It turned out that he was on the Citadel, so both he and Eric went there to actually find him and confront him. But even though they used the same word, they had different meanings attached to it. Eric wanted an answer. Geras just wanted him dead. Are you ready? Geras asked through the comm. He was in the catwalks that were along the walls of the lounge, setting up a sniping position. Yes, he answered. Are you? Of course I am. Are you sure? Eric, you know what happened. I do. It wasn't like he was going to forget the sight of his dead comrades lying where they fell, not even treated with respect in death. But I also want to do why it happened. It doesn't matter now. He's going to pay. Now make sure that he doesn't leave. A third voice joined their conversation, sounding stretched out, if that was the right word to use. Alright, you two, what the hell is going on here? Naruto? Said a surprised but also irritated Geras. Where are you? I'm still on the Normandy. You guys left without telling me. Can someone please tell me why it is that Eric is looking at a particular Turian? How? I can see through your cameras. I can do that from here, remember? Eric had forgotten that he could do that. But that wasn't important. What was important was the business before them was taken care of. He walked up to the Turian and stood before him. Hello, Sidonis. The Turian lifted his head and saw the giant blonde. His eyes widened in recognition. Eric? What are? He fell silent, and his eyes widened further in horror. Oh spirits, he's here, isn't he? Geras is here? He stood up quickly and started to walk away. Don't move, Eric, Geras told him. Once he clears you, I'll have the shot. Geras, do not shoot him, Naruto ordered. This doesn't concern you, Naruto. Just stay out of it. Eric reached out and stopped his former teammate from moving. Stay perfectly still, he all but growled at Sidonis. Eric, what the hell? The other Turian demanded. Just let him pass. Sidonis looked at the arm and then at him. What are you doing? He demanded. Let me go. If you move right now, you are going to die. The Turian paled, well, as much as a Turian could pale. You are right. Geras is here and he is here to kill you. I personally would like to see you dead too. Then why are you stopping me? He kept turning his head every which way, trying to see where Geras was supposed to be hiding. Because I want to know, the Einherjar told him, eyes bearing into his. His voice became higher-pitched when he said, Know what? I want to know why you betrayed us. For fuck's sake, Eric! Shouted a now exasperated Geras. I can have him in my sight if you just move. So move already. Geras, hold your shot, Naruto said. That's not your call, Commander. Hold your shot. You should hear what he has to say. Keep him talking, Eric. The Einherjar kept his gaze steady on Sidonis. The Turian, on the other hand, could not look him in the eye. Tell me, he said. Fuck, Sidonis breathed out. Sidonis, tell me. Look, I didn't want to do it. I didn't have a choice, he tried to explain. Everyone has a choice, Geras snarled in the calm. You had a choice, Eric told Sidonis, echoing his friend. Not at the end, not after all they did to me, he retorted but still looked miserable. He looked around and found a tree to look at. It was peaceful looking and full too. It was probably supposed to relax people, but he knew that it wasn't happening to him. The blue suns grabbed me. We already know that. It had taken some digging back on Omega, but they discovered that fact. Once it did, it made sense that he had given them a false tip on the blue suns. That still didn't excuse the fact of what he did. Did you know that they tortured me too? He did know that. It came with being kidnapped. You could have resisted them. I did. He almost shouted. People nearby looked at them, puzzled looks mixing with irritation. Sidonis saw the looks and quieted down. I did, he repeated himself. Why do you think I was gone for 3 days? They were torturing me non-stop. When they finally did stop, I was teetering on the edge. And you went over. He shook his head. No, I only went over when they made one final threat. If I didn't give you up, they wouldn't kill me, they would go after my brother's family and kill them. I couldn't do that to my brother. So you chose your family over your team, Eric said, making sure he felt the full weight of those words. He shuddered in response. Yes, I did. There, we heard his reasons, Geras declared. He's dead. I got them back, though. Eric didn't move out of the way of the shot. He wanted to hear more now. What do you mean by that, Sidonis? The three of you were supposed to be there too. As soon as they let me go, I contacted you and gave you that false tip about the Blue Suns. He probably thought that Eric, and by extension, Gurus would be pleased to hear that he had saved them. But the Einherjar's face darkened into a scowl. So we lived while you caused the others to die. Do you feel proud of that, Sidonis? You left them to die. Anger burned in his eyes for a moment. Don't patronize me, Eric, he snapped. The anger vanished as soon as it had shown, and he looked at the tree again. I know what I did. I know they died because of me, and I have to live with that. I wake up every night, sick and sweating. Each of their faces staring at me, accusing me, he all but mumbled. He looked back at his former teammate. Look at me, Eric. I'm already a dead man. Funny, you seem rather alive to me. He let out a bitter chuckle. That's what you think. But I don't sleep. Food has no taste. I haven't talked to my family since I sold out the team because of how ashamed I am. There are days I just want it to be over. I can give him that, Gurus said through the calm move aside, Eric. Let me have the shot. He stared for the longest time at Sidonis, seeing how pathetic and beaten he looked. And he knew that whatever it was they could or would do to him would not compare to what he was putting himself through. Gurus, there's nothing we can do here. Yes, there is. I can kill him. For the love of the ancestors, Gurus, look at him. Does this look like the same Sidonis we knew? They had known a Sidonis who had been brave, skilled with a gun, and loyal to the team. The Sidonis before him was none of those things now. He just looked miserable and pathetic. No, Gurus admitted, his voice still growling lightly. But the others still deserved better. He could still see their faces. Eric, Sidonis said, not looking the big Einherjar in the face but rather still looking at the tree. Tell Gurus, I guess there's nothing I can say to make it right. For a moment, there was nothing but dreadful silence on the calm. Eric was worried that Gurus would still try to take the shot. It might be a bit tricky, but he had a feeling that he would be able to pull it off. But instead Gurus said, just go. Tell him to go. Sidonis, Eric said, and the Turian looked at him once more. Get out of here. Neither one of us wants to see or hear from you again. Relief briefly shone through the misery on his face. Thank you, Eric. He didn't want thanks. Just leave, Sidonis. Do not come back. The Turian started to move, but stopped and looked around once more. I'll try, Gurus. I'll make it up to you, somehow, he said aloud, but not so loud as to draw attention again. There wasn't a reply from Gurus or Eric. He left, and the Einherjar watched him go like a dog with his tail lowered. Well, I am glad that is over and done with, he finally said. I'm glad to hear it, Naruto's voice spoke again. I forgot that you were there, Naruto, Gurus told him. That had been the point. This wasn't something I needed to handle. You both had it under control. However, that doesn't excuse the fact that you guys disappeared on me and the team. You get your asses back to the Normandy. I want an explanation of what exactly happened. His voice vanished, leaving the two of them alone on it. As soon he saw that Sidonis was gone, Eric turned away. Perhaps we should do as we are told? He suggested to Gurus as he walked away from the lounge. Yeah, we should, the Turian agreed. We are going to be in for a long conversation when we get back to the ship. No, I'll be in for a long conversation when we get back to the ship. You, he repeated. Yes, me, Gurus said. This is hardly your fault, Gurus. This is completely my fault, Eric. I'm the one who spent the most time looking for Sidonis, even when you and Masashi were content to never see him again. You two kept researching his tracks for me. But we still did it. I came here with you and I am sure that Musashi would have done the same thing if he had been with us. They had both agreed that if they had waited for the swordsman to get back, it might be too late. I know that, and I'm glad for it. But this is my responsibility, and I will explain it to Naruto. I think I can get him to understand what it was I was trying to do. Location, the Normandy. As Naruto stepped away from the map, he restrained the urge to rub his forehead. But it was a strong urge. Why do these people want to give me a headache? He asked. If they didn't give you a headache, they wouldn't be worth the trouble of working with, Kurama retorted. Besides, they're big boys. They don't need someone watching them over constantly. He understood what the fox was saying. But that didn't mean he liked it. At the very least they could have told me. His oldest tenant just rolled his eyes. Hey, Zaid said from behind him. He turned and saw the merc standing a few feet away with his arms crossed. What's up, Zaid? You seem to like helping out the others on their little problems. He nodded. I do what I can to help them. There's nothing wrong with that. Zaid scoffed at that. I know a few people who'd call you a soft-hearted sentimentalist, and what you're doing is going to end up getting you killed. And how much should I bet that those people never had anyone they could rely on? He asked. He didn't get an answer, so he kept talking. I help people out because it's the right thing to do. Then you wouldn't mind helping me out with something then? Sure, he said without hesitation, causing some of his tenants to groan. What do you need? Codex entry. Historical Shinobi Uprising, an event that changed the political landscape of the elemental countries. The Shinobi Uprising came at a surprise to most of the participants in the beginning. There was the question of what the shinobi were doing was right. As the fighting continued and the daimyos sought to pressure the hidden villages into surrender more and more, that question eventually faded. The foundations of the rebellion occurred in the aftermath of the War of Three Flags, see, Child Soldiers. After realizing what their policy had resulted in a horrifying death toll, the shinobi of each country and nation began to radically change the laws in regards to age requirements for enlistments. They also took a more thorough look at the remaining laws that governed them, such as the time necessary in the academy, the ability to enter the Chunin exams at any time after becoming a genin, amongst other things. When the revisions were finished, it was present to the daimyos. The daimyos considered the revisions and in a move that shocked the shinobi, accepted only a few and rejected the rest, including the revision regarding the accepting shinobi of any age. That alone brought forth a protest that lasted 5 years. It garnered more recognition when Sakura Haruno joined the protest as a leader, prompting the remaining members of the Konoha 11 to join as well, even going so far as to talk to the daimyo of the Land of Fire, before his court. Since the end of the Fourth Shinobi World War, the daimyos had felt that their power and control over the lands they ruled was being eroded away by the shinobi. That fear grew even more so during the War of Three Flags, as the shinobi had gone to war with barely a permission from them. The Land of Fire daimyo was amongst the most suspicious, having felt like he was only given his power back at the whims of the shinobi. When Sakura spoke to him, he shouted at her to be silent and infamously declared, "The shinobi serve the daimyo. I decide how old a shinobi should be when he is killed. Remember your place." Sakura, while initially shocked by the shouting, did not lose the temper made famous from the previous war. Instead, when he finished, she replied, "You forget your place, Lord Daimyo. The shinobi serve you at our pleasure. But now, I believe that Lady Tsunade will take that pleasure back." When she was done, she turned and left the courtroom, the palace, and the capital. That meeting is regarded as the opening scene of the uprising. Fearing retaliation, the daimyo sent a military force to Kanehigakure to suppress and control it. They were also to bring Tsunade Senju in for questioning of treason. The force was repelled, and because of it, Kanehigakure declared that it would no longer serve the daimyo of the Land of Fire. The news of what happened spread across the countries, and the other daimyos began to see their own hidden villages in fearful light. When they too sent suppression forces as well, the hidden villages responded in kind and followed Kanehigakure's example. The fighting that followed afterwards went for a matter of months, close to half a year. The shinobi forces, hardened and experienced by 2 wars, had the clear advantage over the forces produced by the daimyos. The samurai from the Land of Iron stayed neutral, although it was clear they leaned on the side of the shinobi. As they lost more and more battles, the daimyos sought help from Midgard and the frontier for aid. Midgard stayed silent, and the Empire of Steel sent only one response. "If you can't put your own house in order, someone else should rule." In the end, the shinobi won and forced the daimyos to surrender their authority and right to rule. There were many who wondered what might happen since the daimyos were gone, who would rule the countries. The kages took that responsibility onto their own shoulders, effectively becoming rulers of both their village and their land. They also formed the Council of the Kages, a way of government that would ensure that the change of power would not fail. To ensure that no future kage would enter the countries without any force to stop them, they appointed kages to that land, bringing them to the same level as them, and encouraged shinobi to live there and give them support. The beginnings were shaky, but as time went on, they settled, and the Council of Kages proved to be an effective government for the elemental countries. Chapter 55. Would you wait already? Location: Zoria. Remind me, Naruto thought as he crouched behind a metal pipe that came out of the ground only to sink back into it like some kind of burrowing snake. Why am I in this situation again? He heard the sound of a bullet fly close by and flinched away on instinct. Anyone else want to explain this one, or can I do it? Kurama asked the other 8 Biju. I'm good, Shikaka said first. It's much more fun to watch. Komi fluttered his wings. Have a good time. He was content just to flutter around in the air at the moment. Would you just get to it already? Gyuki demanded. We've already figured out that you're the one who's going to do it. I want to hear from everyone, the fox replied loftily, just to be sure. Get on with it already, Saiken told him. Ditto, Sun chimed in. There, Matatabi said to Kurama, you've got your answer. Now get to the lecture. Thank you. He turned his attention back to their Jinchuriki, and proceeded to lecture him in his best lecturing voice. The reason you are in this situation is because you said yes to helping Zaid out without listening to where you were going, or what you would be doing. Took you long enough, Naruto retorted. I thought that you were going to have a debate about whether or not you should have the honor of lecturing. You jest, but was what I said off the mark? No, he admitted. He had agreed to help Zaid with what was on his shoulders. That had brought the two of them, along with Grunt, Thane, Morden, and Jacob to a planet he only learned the name of after getting there. From where they landed, it seemed like a jungle. The only thing that stood was a large refinery off in the distance. They went through the jungle at a quick pace and found the south entrance to the refinery. Unfortunately, that same entrance was guarded by Blue Suns who started shooting as soon as they came into sight. That was how he was in the current situation. Glad to see you understand your position. By the way, Jutsu incoming, the fox added casually. You might want to dodge to your left. He rolled over as soon as he heard the suggestion. The pipe he had been using as cover exploded as a stream of water burst through it. Damn it, he heard a Blue Sun curse. I missed him. Thanks for that. And thanks for telling me where you are. He leaned out of cover and saw the offending merc on the other end of the battlefield, standing out in the open while other mercs were out in front. He probably thought that no bullet would be able to reach him, not with the others in front of him. And while that might have been true in any other case, Naruto didn't learn that ricochet move from Tenten for nothing. The only thing that would be tricky was the distance. He looked out again to check how far away the merc, fingering a shuriken into his palm. The merc saw him too and clasped his hands together. Jacob, covering fire. The blonde ordered. Jacob stepped from his cover on the side and started shooting. The merc flinched and his hands separated. Got you now, he thought. The shuriken whipped out of his hand as he threw it at the nearby cliff face. It bounced off, like he knew it would, and flew right at the merc, ending up in his throat. The merc fell, choking on his blood. The mercs that were trying to keep him covered were surprised when he fell. It was a moment that they would regret because that was the moment Grunt charged right into them, crushing two beneath his feet. The others fell quickly to his machine gun. Ha, die like the pyjacks you are! He roared as the last one fell to the ground, helmet and head all but shredded. Grunt, I thought you stopped doing that. Jacob called out to him. Why would I? He demanded. Left self open, Morden said as he joined the Krogan and started firing at the Blue Suns coming up from the path on their left. Naruto went around the side and started shooting as they rushed past. Zaid was right there with him, grinning viciously. When the blonde stopped and took cover, he stood his ground and kept on shooting. Grunt and Morden were supported by Jacob and they held the line against the mercs. It quickly became two-front fight for the Blue Suns. But they were able to adapt, forming two firing lines and keeping the pressure while the chakra users amongst them were able to use the jutsu they had. Where the hell are they coming from? Grunt demanded as he mowed down two mercs only to have them instantly replaced with two more. Most likely refinery, Morden replied. He scowled as he kept shooting. I know that much. But how are they getting here so fast? They've got a dispatcher, Jacob said, spotting the Turian talking fast on the comm. I see him right there. Morden raised his shotgun and found that he didn't have the range. He swapped out for a longer range weapon, which he was less skilled in but could still use. He lifted the sights to his eye but got forced to the ground when his shields vanished and he got hit in the side. Don't have clear shot. Naruto looked over the rock cropping he was using for cover. He started to reach for another shuriken or kunai, whichever was handy, but the mercs kept their fire equally on him, and on Zaid. Damn it, I don't have one either. I have it, Thane's voice spoke through the comm. Thane? asked the surprised Zaid. It caused a momentary lapse in his shooting, and the Blue Suns took full advantage of it, pouring on the firepower. He got hit in the chest, the shields taking most of the damage until they couldn't. When his armor started taking the hits, he finally dove for cover against one of the support beams. Damn it, Thane! Where the hell were you? Forgive me. There was a Blue Sun with a rocket launcher in place. I had to dispatch him before being able to deploy my rifle. I am now ready to support. That explained what he had been doing to the merc on Naruto's team. But it didn't explain his location. Where are you? Above you. Either of them looked up when they heard it. The urge was there, but years of experience and training for both of them caught that urge and held it down. Glad to have you, Thane, Naruto said to him. Now show me what you've got. Name the targets. Hit the dispatcher first, and then take out the chakra users. We'll handle the rest. He stepped out of cover and started shooting. His shields recovered. Zaid joined him, getting closer to them. Understood, was the simple reply. How long do you think he's going to take? Isabu asked. There was a gunshot sound from above them, and the dispatcher died in mid-sentence. The chakra users followed, some about to clasp their hands together. Does that answer your question? Sun asked the turtle. Yes, it does. Thane wasn't done there. He continued to fire on the Blue Suns, killing them all with a shot apiece. Confusion grew in the ranks. Naruto took advantage of that. Move forward, get close, he ordered everyone. He and Zaid moved towards the Blue Suns line, still shooting as they went. From the other side, they could hear Grunt leading the move, laughing all the while. The Blue Suns held as they advanced, but it didn't prove anything. They died all the same. Zaid led them the way the mercs had come from. It took them through another tiny patch of jungle and to a bridge that was inactive. If it was active, it would connect to the iron walkway attached to the cliff side on the other end. Zaid went for the controls immediately, turning the bridge on. But as it extended, the comm frequency that they had hacked into came alive again. This is Commander Santiago, a voice said, a familiar voice to Zaid, so familiar that his trigger finger started itching. If any of you retreat while the intruders are still alive, I'll kill you myself. Now get the hell back out there. As soon as the voice stopped talking, Zaid did. Vito, he growled, sounds like he hasn't changed. You don't sound that surprised, Naruto replied, looking at him from across the width of the bridge. I knew he was a sadistic bastard back when we started the Blue Suns. The Suns only got meaner after he staged his little coup 20 years ago. He glared at all of them before saying, so yeah? We have a past. Surprising, was not aware Zaid, creator of Blue Suns, Morden remarked. Even though the way he spoke sounded normal for him, he was actually surprised. You and me both, Jacob said in agreement. They had all seen the tattoo on Zaid's neck, but they had just assumed that it meant he had been a member at one point, not the actual creator of the Blue Suns. Grunt snorted in exasperated irritation. What does it matter? He demanded. It matters to some people, Thane told the Krogan. Information about the hierarchy of a mercenary group always pays well. Yeah, well, that information wouldn't pay you squat, Zaid rebuked him. Fuck, even getting squat would be generous. So why doesn't anyone know you were the creator of the Blue Suns? Naruto asked him. He spun around to the blonde, eyes blazing with a raging hatred. Because it's not common knowledge, he all but snarled. Vito wiped me out of the records. He could just do that. Sounded like a surefire way to control something if anyone could get their hands on the books. He ran the books, I led the men. Worked well for a while. Then Vito decided to start hiring Batarians. Cheaper labor, he said. Goddamn terrorists, I said. And so he got rid of you. 20 years, Morden mused aloud. Long time for grudge. Seems almost pointless. The merc whirled around to face the doctor, his hand almost going for his gun. A grudge? He demanded, getting in the Solarian's face and putting his hand on his throat. Vito turned my men against me. He paid 6 of them to restrain me while he put a gun to my head and pulled the trigger. For 20 years, I've seen that bastard every time I closed my eyes. Every time I sighted down on a target. Every time I heard a gunshot. Don't you dare call that a goddamn grudge, you fucking lizard. And don't call it worthless either. Misheard me, the Solarian said, still calm. Oh, I heard you. No. Said almost. Can acknowledge need. Can admire tenacity for keeping it this long. The glare didn't leave his face, but he did let go of the Solarian and step back. So you were able to survive a headshot? Naruto asked him. Yeah, he replied. And you survived your ship getting disintegrated. A stubborn person can survive just about anything. Rage is a hell of an aesthetic. I wouldn't know about that. All I had was memory loss and waking up in captivity, the blonde said, tossing the words out like they were talking about different kinds of coffee. In any event, let's get a move on. Zaid nodded in agreement and went back to turning the bridge on. As it extended, Vito's voice spoke through the comm again. They're at the southern access. All squads mass at the gatehouse. Now! They know we're here, the merc proclaimed as the bridge finally connected. Nervous? Naruto asked. Hardly, he retorted, pulling his gun back out. Bring it on, you son of a bitch! He charged across the bridge and up the path, his blood up and howling for blood. They went after him at the same speed, easily catching up with him. Squads Charlie Delta. Mass on the gatehouse. They heard the dispatcher order through the comm. More for the kill, said Zaid, eager for it. Ease up, Zaid, Jacob told him, catching up to him and keeping the pace steady. He turned his gaze on the man. He probably would have shot him if he wasn't so focused on getting to Vito. Don't tell me what to do, he snapped. Jacob didn't flinch or step back. If anything, he stepped forward. Don't put us behind. You need someone to watch your back and we're it. I can see the gatehouse, Thane said, interrupting their fight. He was looking at the gate at the end of the path ahead. It and the walls built around it didn't try to force the landscape to change to suit it. Rather, it was built along with the landscape. But he didn't care about that. His eyes narrowed as he took in all of the details about the gatehouse. The gate is unlocked. What? Naruto said, even though he didn't stop running or even looked back at him. The gate is unlocked. He considered those words, all the way still running. Everyone slow down, he ordered, slowing his speed until he was coming to a jog and then to a walk. Why? Zaid demanded, even as he was coming to a stop. They're expecting us. Yes. And? He asked, impatiently. So, what's the point in rushing to get there? I mean, really. We can walk there, take a breath and calm down. The merc looked at the gate, and then back at him. It's right there. I know that. I can see. But I don't see the point in rushing there. Cut time for them to prepare, fortify, possibly set up ambush points, Mordin pointed methodically. Those were all good points. But even so, the blonde shinobi shrugged his shoulders. We'll be fine. Come on, let's take a walk. He started walking towards the gate, checking his guns and other weaponry as he went. You're crazy, you know that, right? Sun told him. He scoffed mentally. You're just now figuring this out? No, I figured it out a while back. I just felt like it bore repeating. Keeps it fresh, he explained. You understand. Oh, of course, he replied, completely understanding. We wouldn't want to get it stale, otherwise it wouldn't be any good. The Yambi chose to stop with the line of conversation. He had the feeling that if it went on, Naruto will somehow manage to get the last word in and come out the verbal victor in the process. Gyuki spoke next. So what exactly is your plan in regards to the Blue Suns once you're in there? Kick everyone's ass? No, I'd figured I'd play around with them, irritating the hell out of them, and then kick their asses. Are you trying to recall your Genin days, Gaki? Kurama asked him. That's what it sounds like to me, minus the ass-kicking. He didn't answer because they reached the gate. The light was still green and it would open as soon as they got close enough for it to sense them. He stopped short and looked the gate up and down. Hello? He called out to the door, lowered the hood to release his helmet. Once it was off, he put the hood back up. It's your next-door neighbor. I couldn't help but notice that your gate is unlocked. Is everything all right? Jacob stared at him. Really? He asked. Should not be surprised, Mordin told him. Completely in line with possible actions. Grunt in agreement. It's Sensei's way. Don't bother trying to stop him. Hello? Naruto called out again. Is there anyone in there? Are you too injured to respond? Zaid scowled at the hooded blonde in irritation. He just wanted to get in there and kill Vito. They were wasting time just standing out here. He looked at the others, but they were standing there, waiting. Even Thane was doing it. You're not annoyed by this? He asked Drell. He's done this before, Thane replied. I've personally found that if he wants to be vindictive or vicious, he knocks. Naruto was beginning to look impatient. Alright, I'm getting concerned here. I'm going to come in and make sure that everything is alright. If you don't want me to see anything, you should have said something. He went to the gate, and it opened for him. They went through and were greeted by a line of Blue Sun's mercs waiting on a walkway with their guns out. The only one who wasn't holding a gun or even had a gun out was the man in the middle. He wore the same armor as the other mercs but wore no helmet, showing his face to them. They could see that it was possibly a handsome face, with dark skin and hair that matched and were casual enough to look cool, if it wasn't for the fact of the arrogantly smug look on his face. Well, it looks like everyone's alright, Naruto said as he walked right into the open area of the gatehouse, still using his friendly voice. The others had no choice but follow him in, their weapons at the ready. Really, you guys need to shout something out next time. I was getting a bit worried. I mean, a gunshot went off, overriding his voice. He stopped and looked down at where the bullet missed his foot. He looked back up at the walkway. Now that's just rude. Shut the fuck up already, you idiot, said the Blue Sun with no helmet. You couldn't get the point the first time around? Don't bother answering. I don't want to hear it. He dismissed the hooded idiot and turned his attention to the scarred merc in the ragtag armor instead. Zaid Masani. You finally tracked me down. A snarl came to Zaid's lips as he recognized the man. The years, or grooming since he had always been vain as hell, had been kind to him. But he still knew the man. Vito, he growled. His hand itched to reach for his gun. He listened to the itch. His hand went for the gun on his back. Naruto, stop him! Komiai said instantly. But the blonde didn't have to do anything. Vito took care of it with a snap of fingers. The mercs at his sides raised their guns just a little bit higher, making Zaid pause. Don't be stupid, Zaid, Vito told him. I have a whole company of bloodthirsty bastards behind me, ready to kill or be killed on my command. Jacob eyed the mercs on the walkway and then looked at Zaid. He saw the merc's hand was still in reach of his gun. Zaid, put the arm down, for iron's sake. Don't tell me what to do, Zaid growled at him. He kept his gaze on the bastard that had turned on him. Vito just laughed when he saw the glare he was getting. Actually, take your shot, he taunted. Give my men a reason to put you down like the mad dog you are. Again, he said, making one more emphasis. Surprisingly, that just made Zaid laugh darkly. Would they be the same men you paid to hold me down? He asked. If that's it, you're stupider than I thought, Vito. It only meant they were loyal to the money, not either of us. I know that. That's why those guys aren't among the living anymore. A smirk played across his lips. There are only so many missions and jobs a man can take. You would understand, right? Yeah, I'd understand. Unlike you, he retorted. You always preferred to hide in the back, working on the books than actually fighting. The first time I dragged you out on a job, you almost pissed your pants. If he was looking for a reaction from the Blue Sun's mercs, he didn't get one. Vito, on the other, scowled tightly. It's been almost 25 years since that happened. I stopped thinking about it. Why haven't you? Zaid's snarl turned into a small smirk. I told you that I was never going to let you live it down. Yes. You could never let go of the past. Why else would you be here now? He folded his arms and looked like he didn't care about what was happening now. But I don't think I'll give you the satisfaction of even getting close to me. I think I prefer to watch you get gunned down. He lifted a hand to his ear and said, engage. Thudding boots erupted in their ears as Blue Suns emerged from the door in front of them. They moved in quick fashion, using it to surround the 6 of them. Morden turned around and around, pointing his shotgun at the mercs, but they were all around him and 2 rings thick. Shit, he simply said once he got the full scope of it. Grunt had the opposite reaction. This is going to be fun, he declared with a grin. He didn't care about the number of guns pointing at him at that moment. It just made it all more exciting. This is a bit much, isn't it? Naruto spoke, still sounding friendly, his hands in his pockets. I mean, we only came to make sure you guys were alright. We didn't need this kind of welcoming committee. If you think this is a welcoming committee, you're an idiot, Vito told him. Again, he dismissed him for his former friend. Really, Zaid, you should have gotten faster. I had all this time to set up this little ambush. Zaid didn't glare at him. He did that to Naruto. See? He demanded. I knew this was going to happen. Oh, relax, Zaid, the hooded blonde replied. You're making it sound like we don't have a chance in hell against these guys. You don't, Vito called out from the walkway. You're surrounded, outgunned, and outmatched. I'd say that the odds are against you. You'd be wrong, Naruto told him, losing the friendly voice for a hard, serious one. The change was so abrupt that some of the Blue Suns flinched. Suddenly, the friendly but obviously oblivious man was gone. In his place was a man who knew what he was doing. The odds are not against us, they're against your men. How so? The Blue Sun leader asked condescendingly. One hand reached up to grasp the hem of his hood. Because you obviously do not know whom you are fucking with, he declared, pulling down his hood so all could look upon his face. As soon as they saw the blonde hair, blue eyes, and whiskered cheeks, all the humans who bore the mark of the Blue Suns felt a sudden cold sweat. It was also in that moment of being stunned that Naruto acted. His other hand lifted out of his robe, clutching smoke grenades, and threw them to the ground. His team and the Blue Suns surrounding them were engulfed in the stream. His team hit the ground on instinct. That turned out to be a good thing as the Blue Suns opened fire. They waited for the cacophony of gunfire, shouting, and bullets hitting metal to pass. It did, and that was when Naruto struck. Vito couldn't see what was going on in the smoke. It was too damn thick and the noise coming from inside was deafening. He could order the men on the walkway to open fire, but there was a very good chance they would hit their own men. He was confident that they would kill the bastard. But when the smoke finally settled and cleared, his men were all on the ground, dead or on their way to dying. Standing over them all was Naruto himself, a gun in each hand. Vito could admit in that moment, he was a little afraid. But then Zaid pulled his gun and started shooting. The bullets didn't even come close to hitting him, instead hitting the pipes behind him. What was that? He demanded, getting his confidence back while the pipes hissed behind him. Going nearsighted, old friend? Zaid rushed in closer, taking cover close to a wheel. Burn, you son of a bitch, he demanded, raising his gun and opening fire. He was aiming for the pipes, just like before. They hit again and the gas escaping from the pipes caught fire. He watched in satisfaction as the pipes exploded, burning brightly. But that satisfaction soured when Vito got back to his feet. You just signed your death warrant, Masani. He spat down. Zaid just held his arms, challenging him to take a shot. He didn't. A sneer came on his face and he left the walkway. Fucking coward, Zaid growled to himself as he watched his former friend disappear from sight. The rest of the mercs up high recovered. They brought their guns to the edge and started shooting. Naruto and the others quickly dove for cover. Care to do another smoke dance for us, Commander? Jacob asked him. The blonde looked at him incredulously. Smoke dance? He repeated. What else were you going to call it? Probably something better than smoke dance, he said in an affronted manner. Be annoyed later, Kurama rebuked him. Or did you forget the fact that there are people currently shooting at you? I didn't forget, he replied. He looked over the edge of cover and raised his war hawks to fire back. Curious, Morden said. He lowered his guns instantly and looked over at the Solarian. What? What's curious? Curious was never good in these situations. What Zaid is doing? He whipped his head and saw Zaid smashing the butt of his gun against a valve. Gas was hissing out every time he smashed the valve. Zaid, what the fuck are you doing? He shouted. He gave one final smash and the gas went off in an explosive burst. It traveled up the pipe, which had sneaked up and behind the walkway. That pipe exploded, and this time it was a large enough of an explosion that they fell off the walkway, dead. But the explosion didn't stop there. It kept going and going, exploding every other minute. Zaid put his gun away and looked back at the blonde. Opening the gate, he answered the question. Naruto did see that the gate beneath the walkway was now open, although blown out would be a better description. But he didn't care about that. He stood up and marched over to Zaid. That was unnecessary, Zaid, he told the merc. We would have gotten in without. How? He challenged. After wandering out in the jungle for hours, looking for another way in? You want to waste time out here, go ahead. The next thing he knew, the world twisted and blurred and he was face first on the ground with his nose dangerously close to being smashed in. He could feel a gun barrel in the back of his head. Don't get like that with me, Zaid, he could hear Naruto say into his ear. I've already seen this happen once before. I'm not watching this again. We came here as a favor to you, but we do this my way. You really want to do this, Uzumaki? he replied, his voice muffled because of its positioning. We have to try to salvage a refinery, and the people inside because of you now, so I don't have time for anything else. He eased the pressure off of the merc and hoisted him up. Zaid knocked the hand holding him off. Let these people burn, he declared. Vito dies, whatever the cost. That's not your call. He turned to the now destroyed gate and signaled the others to follow him. Zaid glared at his backside for a moment, but followed him all the same. Beyond the gate lay a path out in the open sky. The path went straight to the refinery, ending at a door on ground level. They could see the refinery already going up in flames. Nicely done, Grunt told Zaid. It wasn't approval or sarcasm. The Krogan said it as a simple fact. Thanks. The merc kept it at that. He was too busy trying to restrain himself from rushing over to the door and getting into the refinery. If he tried to brush past the blonde, he was likely to end up with a bullet in his backside or his head. When they reached the door and it opened, the ground shook with another explosion. Explosions getting bigger quickly, Morden noted. Problematic. Then we just get to Vito quicker, Zaid replied, going for the door. The explosion continued, making their legs wobble as they felt the shockwaves. The door opened and Zaid was about to go inside when Naruto heard movement from behind. Behind us. He warned the others, spinning around and lifting the guns. But he stopped before he started shooting. There was movement, but it didn't come from behind them, but from a walkway up above. There was a human standing at the railing. He was wearing a worker's uniform and was waving frantically down at them. Help! He shouted. We're trapped. We can't get to the gas valves to shut them off. The whole place is going to blow. Another explosion shook a piece of the building, making him wince and flinch away from it. He looked down pleadingly at them. Zaid was unmoved. No time, he declared. Vito's probably halfway to the shuttle docks by now. So you're going to let them die? Naruto asked him, keeping his eyes on the panicking worker. Damn right I am, he said without shame. We stopped to help these people and Vito gets away. And if he gets away, I'm blaming you. You should only blame yourself. You're the one who caused the fire. That means you're the one who's going to clean it up. Like fucking hell I will, he spat, taking a threatening step towards him. Naruto whirled around, grabbed the merc by the neck, bringing him in close. I don't care if we lose Vito. You clean up your mess. Lucky for you, we're going to be here to help you. You got any questions? The merc opened his mouth but he kept talking. Tough, I don't want to hear them. We're going to save these people. He pushed him away. Zaid almost stumbled but recovered. He glared at the blonde but was matched by his own. I knew this was a mistake, the merc muttered to himself but loud enough for the others to hear him. If we're gonna do this, we'd better get to it. Glad to hear it. The shinobi turned away from him and looked back at the burning refinery. There was another path beneath the rail. It would be easy to get down to but a little difficult to get back up over for anyone who wasn't a shinobi. He hopped over with no hesitation and the others followed him. The path went down a couple flights of stairs before leading into the building itself. 2 explosions went around them as they went in. Oh great, just what we needed, Jacob said as he ducked down to avoid the heat of the explosion. Should have stayed on ship if explosions too much, Morden remarked. I didn't say that. Grunt came to a stop at the door, making everyone else stop too. It's locked, he told them. One moment, the Solarian told him. He walked to the door and activated his Omni tool. A few seconds later and the door opened. There. Where did you learn to hack? Jacob asked him as they all went through. He was a little surprised by it. Former STG, he replied. It was all he said. The room they went into was only a stairwell, so they went upwards. The room at the stairwell's end was almost engulfed in flames. The smoke was so bad that even when they put on their mask filters, they still ran the risk of coughing in smoke. We need to quell these flames, Thane told the rest of them. How do we do that? Naruto asked him. I don't think a Swate Unjutsu is going to work in here. What he knew only covered wide to medium spread destruction, nothing so small and precise to take out a fire. I see a computer up ahead, Jacob shouted over the flames, pointing in front of them. He ran over to it, and gingerly put his fingers on the keys. It's the fuel control console. We can redirect it from here. So redirect it, Zaid told him. Even in the situation that they were in, he looked back and gave the merc a sarcastic look. What a brilliant idea! Why didn't I think of that? Just do it. The flames in front of them lowered some, and the ones on the stairs off to their right died down completely. Shit! He swore. It only covered this part of the room. The rest of the fire is still going. We have to keep moving, Naruto told the others over an explosion that rocked the entire room. Maybe there'll be more up ahead. There were more up ahead, and each lowered the flames a little bit more. It also cleared a path through the room. They followed it through from one side of the room to the other. As they climbed the short staircase, they saw people trapped behind glass, pounding on away it. They were wearing worker uniforms and probably got trapped behind the glass trying to get out. Fucking hell, swore Zaid. That was just what they needed, more problems. Jacob saw the same thing but had a different reaction. We have to get them out. He ran over to the glass. He tried to find a way to open it up but couldn't see any kind of switch. One of the men on the other side shook his head and pointed upwards. Upstairs, he shouted, the glass muffling his voice. The extinguishing system is upstairs. The doors won't open until the fire's out. Another of the workers shouted. We're going to die. A third screamed in hysteria. No, Jacob told them. You're not going to die. You're going to get out of here. I promise. He turned around and looked for the stairs that went up. He found them on this side of the room, but the path was blocked by flames. Fortunately, there was a console that could redirect the fuel close by. He ran over to it and activated it with a few keystrokes. No one said a word as the flames died. They were too busy running through the dying embers and then up the stairs. As they reached the second floor, they saw the door that led into an office. There! Naruto shouted as an explosion rocked his feet. We need to go there. But just as they started to move, another explosion shook the floor. But this time, it also came out of the wall in front of them. A large pipe burst through the wall and then pierced the walkway, causing it to collapse. Shit! Grunt cursed at the sight of the ruined walkway. But Thane saw that the walkway didn't go straight to the door. It also went out to the side, looking over the first floor. Around, he told them over all the noise. We must go around. They saw what he was talking about quickly enough and raced out onto it, going around the missing piece of the walkway. They reached the office and went in. Inside was strictly utilitarian. There were no personal pieces there at all. That didn't matter to them as they were trying to find the fire extinguishing system. Thane was the one who found it first and activated it. Water began to spread out from the sprinklers on the ceiling above. The remaining flames began to get beaten down by the water until they were practically gone. All right, keep it moving, people, Naruto told the others. He saw the door leading out the other side of the office. We go through there. They went through the door and came out onto another walkway. From below, they saw the workers running for the exit. They got out, Jacob said in relief. Lucky them, Zaid snorted. Can we get a move on? While they didn't like how he put brusquely, the others knew that he had a point. They couldn't just stay up here while the refinery burned down around them. The room the walkway led into didn't have a staircase to take them down. So they hopped down, having no problems with it. Two Blue Sun's mercs heard the sound of Grunt crashing to the ground and came to investigate. Hey, hold it right there! The merc on the left shouted at them, raising his shotgun up into a firing position. He kept his focus on the people on the ground, forgetting about the person above. Thane stood at the rail and fired one shot. The merc on the right made the mistake of looking at his partner falling down to the ground. When he looked back, Naruto was already on him. The blonde gave him one hard punch in the face, and then grabbed his neck. One sharp twist later and both mercs were dead on the ground. The next room was empty, and the only thing that they needed to see was the door that was on the other end. They went through that one and saw that they were in a large room. Does anyone have a clue where the fuck we are now? Grunt asked. Must be final packaging area, Morden answered. He looked at the Solarian. What makes you think that? He pointed at the door at the far end. Cargo bay doors. Would only have those in room like this if led outside to docking port. Veto's that way then, Zaid declared. We go there and find him. He started down the steps. Careful, Thane told him in his quiet voice. This place is ideal for an ambush. He could see it in how the pipes ran across the room, how the boilers could provide vantage points or good cover, and how the crates were stacked in such a way that could be considered barricade-like. Naruto saw the same thing. He gestured at Grunt and then at the room. The Krogan took a hard look at the scene, trying to figure out what it was that his sensei was seeing. When he did finally see, he just nodded to the blonde. The merc snorted at the Drell. Let them come. They're not going to get in the way of me getting Vito. He continued down the steps and the others followed him. Naruto motioned Thane to take a high point like he had before. The Drell nodded and leapt to the top of the nearest boilers. There he settled into a comfortable position and waited. As soon as the others touched the ground floor, the calm came alive with Vito's voice. First person to bring me Masani's head gets something special in their paycheck. At those words, Blue Sun's mercs came streaming out of the doors on either side of the room. They were trying to box the team in and then mow them down with overwhelming firepower. But they hadn't really counted on Naruto. He fell back to cover, dropping his guns and clasping his hands together in a hand seal. This is probably going to hurt, he thought to himself. Even though he thought of it like that, he knew that this would be a good way to stem the tide. Tajukage Bunshin no Jutsu! He cried out. Their side of the room was suddenly filled with his clones. The sight of so many made the Blue Sun stop for a moment. What are we waiting for? One clone demanded. Let's kick their asses! The rest of the clones made a resounding battle cry and plunged right into the mercs. Their front shaped into a wedge that divided the mercs in half. From there, they fought them back, having no hesitation to kill. The original Naruto lay against the crate, his strength suddenly gone. It felt like all he could do was breathe, and it was hard to do that at best. But it was what was going to keep him alive, and that was what he wanted to be. With each breath he took, he felt a little more of his strength come back to him. You guys had better be fighting. He shouted out when he had enough breath to even consider the idea of talking. Of course we are. Zaid shouted from beyond the crate. Gunfire followed his voice when he opened his mouth. That's good to hear. What are you doing lying down? I'm feeling a bit winded. When that did become an excuse? Are we really having this conversation right now? Jacob demanded. Grunt laughed as he let it rip with his machine gun. Go with it. It's entertaining. Naruto found enough strength to get back up onto his knees to look at the fight. The Blue Suns were still trying to get through his clones, and the clones were still pushing them back. Vito was screaming or shouting over the comm, but with all the noise, it became rather irrelevant. He grabbed one of his guns and started taking shots. It wasn't as accurate as he wanted, but at this point, he would have been glad that they were firing in the right direction. Pyros incoming! Shouted Jacob. He saw the flamethrowers already aiming for the clones. With the grade of flamethrowers they were carrying, they would be able to go through the clones without any problems. Shots rang out, solitary ones compared to the bursts going around. The canisters on the pyros' backs started hissing gas. The pyros tried to yank them off, but a few more shots caused the canisters to explode. Excellent shooting, Morden said as the explosion engulfed the would-be pyros. Thane, good part of team. I'm sure that he'll be glad to hear that, Jacob remarked. There was an urge to look back at where Thane was to see what his reaction was. He squashed that urge. They had a fight to get through. As the last Blue Sun fell, it felt like they could breathe a little. Of course, with the way the galaxy worked, that didn't happen. Oh shit. Zaid swore. What? Demanded Naruto, finding strength to get up into a standing position. We've got a heavy mech inbound. It was a Emer mech, and it was fully armed as it stomped its way across the bridge on the other side of the room. That? He said. We'll be fine, don't worry. Zaid stared at the blonde incredulously. Have you gone senile in the head or something? Just shoot it, I'll tell you when to stop. The mech stomped closer, almost reaching the end. Well? Shoot already. He thought the blonde had gone loony but did as he was told. They all opened fire on the mech, lighting up the technical armor it came attached with. It didn't slow down even the slightest. If this gets across, we're going to be in trouble, Zaid thought as he kept shooting. But then the bullets broke the armor, and the mech almost seemed to pause in its action. Grunt, Naruto said. Yeah? The Krogan asked, stopping his shooting. Krogan battering ram. He grinned viciously. You got it. He dropped his gun and charged right at the mech with a challenging roar. The mech saw him coming. It tried to readjust, but he was faster. He bent his head and slammed into the machine. He jerked his crest off to the side and the mech followed, falling down into the space below. The drop was deep enough for him to barely make it out. But he stared down in victory anyway. Zaid didn't care about what the Krogan did. Move it, Grunt. he ordered as he barreled down to the bridge. Grunt stepped out of the way before either of them was sent after the mech. He bounded across the bridge and for the docking bay door. It opened up just in time for him to see a shuttle lifting off, the hatch closing up. "Not this time, Zaid, you son of a bitch!" he heard Vito said smugly through the comm. "See you in another 20 years. The shuttle blasted off, making him stumble back. No, 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 no! He thought in a rage. He lifted his gun and opened fire at the shuttle. He knew that it was futile, but he didn't care. He was too angry, so angry that he had to scream it out. All his fury, frustration, and rage poured out into an outraged roar. It shattered the air and hounded the shuttle, but it didn't reach. When he was done, the shuttle was still out of range. He could see that smug bastard laughing at his futile efforts. "Did you get it out of your system now?" he heard Naruto ask from behind. He whirled around and pointed the gun right at the blonde, who was standing there like he hadn't collapsed and breathing like his life depended on it 10 minutes ago. He didn't do anything, but the rest of the team pointed their guns at the merc in response. He didn't care. "You just cost me 20 years of my life." "I didn't cost you anything," Naruto retorted. "You cost yourself the chance by acting prematurely. I had a chance to kill him. I took it. And you set a refinery to blow in the process, endangering the lives of people who don't have any. It makes me wonder if I should let you stay on my team." The merc just snorted at that. "If you didn't need me, the Akatsuki wouldn't have paid my fee." He lowered his gun. "I'll do what I was paid to do. Nothing more, nothing less," he declared. The others lowered their guns too, but Naruto still looked at him sternly. "So are you going to fly off the handle next time you get a chance, saying fuck it to the rest of us?" "I've survived this long watching my own back. No time to worry about anyone else," he replied, making it sound so simple. But it wasn't simple, not to Naruto. "That's not how things run now, Zaid. You're part of a team. I know you know what that means. If we all do our own thing, we'll get nowhere. But if we work together, then we'll get where we need to be." As much as he didn't want them to, the words had struck home for Zaid. He did remember a time when he was a part of a team, when he was leading the men of the Blue Suns. He remembered the times he felt proud of his men when they had completed a mission that they only could have completed by working as one. You have a point." "I'm sorry, what was that?" the shinobi asked him. "I couldn't hear you." He glared at him but said again, much louder, "I said you have a point. I'm not done with Vito, but I can put that behind me long enough to get your mission done." "Are you sure?" "Yeah, I am. Now let's get the hell out of here." He smiled. "Not yet. We're not done here. Vito's gone. There's no point in staying any longer." He shook his head. "No, there's a point. Next time, Zaid, you should have a little faith in me." He touched his calm. "All right, bring him back." They all looked at him quizzically. A new noise appeared through the chaotic sounds of the refinery burning. It was the sound of the shuttle coming back. Zaid saw it soon enough, flying back from where it had vanished in the sky. He stared at it in stunned amazement as it came closer and closer. How? He asked himself. How was he able to do this? He knew that the blonde didn't have any men in the Blue Suns. He knew the group well enough that they would never have tolerated rats, and would deal with such things harshly. He was also certain that the blonde didn't have any kind of magnetic jutsu that would allow him to bring the shuttle back. No, wait. He called someone to bring it back. That's when it hit him. Naruto Uzumaki was infamous for his uses of clones, and as a shinobi he would know the henge jutsu like the back of his hand. He looked at the blonde. When did you sneak disguised clones amongst the Blue Suns? He demanded. When you weren't looking, Naruto answered. That answered it for him. You did it when you caused the smoke screen. It made perfect sense now. He had been on the ground, making sure that he didn't get killed by crossfire. His ears had been full of people dying and shots being fired. He couldn't have made out clones being made, or moving out of the smokescreen if he had been paying attention. The shuttle landed and the hatch opened. Vito was unceremoniously tossed out onto the ground. He stood back up cursing and shouting. What the fuck is wrong with you people? He demanded at the mercs who left the shuttle. I told you to leave the planet, not come back. He heard 2 shots and there was suddenly pain. Ah! He screamed, falling to the ground. He looked at his legs. They were bleeding, with holes in them too. He tried to move them but they wouldn't respond. He couldn't move them. He didn't need to turn his head to see who it was that shot him, but he still did. The sight of Zaid holding that smoking gun in his hands and the vicious smile on his lips made his blood turn cold. "Got you now, Vito," his old friend said. He looked back at the blue sun standing above him. "What are you waiting for?" he demanded. "Shoot him." But they didn't move. "Oh dear," the Solarian standing next to Zaid said. "Loss of cognitive brain functions?" "Huh?" asked the Krogan. "Brain dead," the blonde explained. "Why didn't he just say that? Would he be Morden if he had?" The Krogan chose to grunt instead of giving an actual answer. "I am in favor of stun paralyses," the Drell said. "That's plausible," the blonde agreed. "Would you lot knock it off?" Zaid told them. "This is stupid." "Shoot him," Vito ordered his men, pointing almost desperately back at his old friend now. The blonde sighed. "All right, Zaid, we'll finish this now." The leader of the Blue Suns heard fingers snapping and his men were engulfed in plumes of smoke. When the smoke vanished, he was staring up at multiple versions of the blonde. They all stared back down at him with nothing showing in their eyes, just cool dismissal. That was when he put the facts together. Blonde hair. Blue eyes. Whiskered like birthmarks on his face. Oh shit. The blondes were all looking at him. He didn't know what tipped them off, but the original immediately said, "You've figured it out." Yep, I am. He tried to think of something, anything, that would keep him alive. I am. Look, the legendary shinobi said, flicking a hand to shut him up. "Whatever you're going to say, don't bother. I'm not the one you need to worry about." He snapped his fingers and the clones all vanished in plumes of smoke. When they cleared, Zaid was still there. Vito saw the look on his former friend's face. He became scared and tried to crawl away. But a hand grabbed his leg and squeezed hard. "Aya!" He yelped in pain at the pressure. "Where the hell do you think you're going?" Zaid asked him. The merc didn't wait for an answer before pulling him back hard. He tried to grab something that would stop the dragging and give him a chance to get away, but the ground was too smooth. He was flipped onto his back and the hand grabbed his throat. Air suddenly became a precious commodity. He tried prying the hand off, but it wouldn't move. "Zaid," he croaked out, trying to form a sentence. Zaid gave him a look that was equal parts disgusted and satisfaction waiting to happen. "Do you see this?" he asked Vito, pointing at his right eye. "You gave it to me when you had me shot in the face. The doctor that found me had to carve out my face to get the bullet." He traced the scar close to his eye. "He gave me this, but I still consider it something you did to me." "Zaid, shut up. You don't get to speak." The ground rumbled beneath them, and another explosion went off in the background. "You might want to hurry this up," Grunt told the merc. "Oh no, I want to enjoy this." He had so many things he wanted to do to the piece of scum-smelling garbage he had in his hands. The Krogan didn't look too impressed by his words. "And we don't want to end up dead. Hurry it up." He wanted to ignore the Krogan and focus on Vito and all the pain he would deal to him. But another explosion went off, and he knew that they didn't have enough time for it. If you hadn't set the refinery to blow, you would have the time, a part of his mind rebuked him. He ignored it. He would be damned to leave without taking something from Vito. So he pulled out a knife he knew had a wickedly sharp edge to it. Vito saw the knife and his eyes widened in fear. What are you going to do?" he asked Zaid. "Guess," he replied before plunging the knife right his eyebrow started. "Is he?" Saiken asked as Vito began screaming. "Yeah," Matatabi answered with a nod. "He is." "Ooh, that's painful." "Even more so without the anesthetic," Koko added. "That's probably the point," Kurama said. "Zaid wants Vito to feel all the pain that he felt, and he's going to make sure that he's going to get it." Vito was still screaming, but they didn't pay much attention to it. It was just background noise at the moment. Naruto watched silently as Zaid continued his bloody work and his once friend was still screaming. Here's hoping he doesn't bite off his own tongue in the process. The fox huffed. "And how is that a bad thing? It makes sure that Vito doesn't die from drowning on his own blood. It wouldn't be a great loss. It would be to Zaid. He's enjoying this." The look of satisfied delight on the merc's face would have been chilling if the blonde had been a fresh genin still. But now, he didn't think twice about it. Shikaku rolled his eyes. A blind person can see that he's enjoying it. Hell, a deaf person could hear that he was enjoying it. He looked over at Kurama and Gyuki. I thought you two were able to make him stop saying the obvious. They didn't answer him. But that was because Komi, I said, I think that he's done now. There, Zaid declared as he pulled away the knife. We match now. There was a wound on Vito's face, mirroring his almost perfectly. The difference was that his was still bleeding, rather badly too. The Blue Sun's leader had screamed, his voice hoarse, while his face was being carved out for him. He tried to speak again. Zaid, please, he managed to whisper out. But that only earned him a hard punch to the face, blackening his eye. You don't get to talk. There was an explosion that was a lot closer than anyone wanted. That was a teeth rattler, Naruto thought. If he had been less steady on his feet, he probably would have fallen down. You might want to consider telling him to move it along, Gyuki said. Yeah, you might have a point there, he acknowledged. Zaid, whatever you're going to do to him, hurry it up. Zaid frowned. There was so much more he wanted to do to Vito. But he felt that explosion too. If they didn't leave soon, they wouldn't leave at all. He looked back at the refinery and an idea came to him on how to finish it once for all. Move it, he told the others as he started walking back to the cargo hatch, dragging Vito. They did and then watched. Vito saw the hatch get closer and closer. What are you going to do to me? He struggled to ask. He wasn't punched in the face again, but that was because Zaid was the hatch and was watching it open. He dragged Vito back into the bay area. The heat washed over them and he could see how the other side of the room was already on fire. That was good to him. He pulled Vito across the bridge and tossed him to the ground. He walked back across and turned the bridge off. His former friend watched this all happen, and a sudden dread fell on him. He realized what Zaid was doing. You can't do this! He shouted. Another explosion went off and the ground shook. The heat of the fires was getting closer. He tried to drag himself to the bridge console. Zaid drew his pistol and fired 2 shots, one for his console and one for the other side. The bridge was fully collapsed and wouldn't come back up now. No! Vito screamed inside his own head. Zaid, you can't do this to me, man! It's me! I know it's you, his friend said coldly as he walked back to the hatch. And I already told you to do something, burn, you son of a bitch. He left the refinery behind, listening to Vito's screams of outrage quickly turn into pain. And he felt satisfied. Location, the Normandy. As soon as Gurus and Eric made it back to the ship, the first thing that greeted them was a rather peeved-looking Naruto. Before either one of them could open their mouths to say anything about what they had done, he pinned the Turian with a look. The den now, he said. He turned around and marched straight for the elevator. Gurus gave Eric a knowing look and followed the human. They rode up in silence, and that silence continued as they walked into the commander's private cabin. It was only when the door closed behind them that Naruto turned to face him. Alright, what the hell was that on the Citadel? He demanded instantly. Gurus had his response ready. I had a lead on Sidoni's that I had to take. And what was this lead? There was a specialist on the Citadel, name of Fade. He was an expert at helping people disappear. Sidoni's was seen with him. If I hadn't moved right away, he would have gotten away. I wasn't going to let that happen. Naruto's eyes narrowed in suspicion. Why are you using the past tense? You really didn't think I was going to just let Fade get away once we found him, did you? He asked in an indigent tone. I certainly wasn't going to let that happen after I found out that Fade was Harkin. Harkin? Repeated the blonde. He remembered that piece of scum. Gurus nodded. Yeah, Harkin, he said. He led us right to Sidoni's. You killed him, didn't you? For a moment, he thought Naruto was talking about Sidoni's. He quickly realized that wasn't the case. I was tempted to, but Eric pointed out that it would be rather pointless to do it. So I left him with a broken nose and called CSCC out on him. You probably would have done the same thing, Kurama told Naruto. He probably would have. But that wasn't what he needed to focus on. So why was Sidoni's so personal, Gurus? You heard the conversation, the Turian said shortly. I want to hear from you. He couldn't look the shinobi directly in the eyes. There was something about that gaze that made him look away. He tipped off the mercs. Told them where our base was, he answered. He drew me, Eric, and Musashi out with a false job, then the mercs hit my team. My men weren't prepared. They tried to hold them off. His voice became thick and he had to stop so the memory wouldn't overwhelm. Naruto waited for HM to start up again and he did. By the time we got back, there were only 2 survivors. They didn't last long. All 10 of them, dead, he declared, his voice buzzing into a growl, because of him. The blonde shinobi didn't look much impressed at his words. All he said was, "And now?" He paused at that. "What about now?" It didn't seem like something too important. "I'm just glad that it's over now," he finally said. "I think you owe a big thank you to Eric for what he did," Naruto said back. "You should never kill someone like Sidonis without hearing his reasons." "What?" He looked the Turian in the eye. "What do you think what would have happened if Eric had moved when you told him to and you had taken the shot?" "Sidonis would be dead. There would be no doubt about that. If Eric had moved, Gurus would have put the bullet into Sidonis' head." "And then what?" He didn't understand. "Sidonis would be dead. It was simple as that." Naruto kept looking at him intently. "And then what?" he asked again. "Nothing," he told the human. "That would be the end of it." He shook his head. "No, it wouldn't be. Killing Sidonis wouldn't have told you why he did it, or why you were spared. Those questions would be at the back of your mind, pecking at you constantly. It would make you turn for the worse, make you irritable, or even anger. You would drive your friends off and you would end up alone, a bitter man." Gurus watched him as he spoke. He spoke like he knew what he was talking about. "How do you know this?" "I told Zaid this, and I'm going to tell you this too, Gurus. I've already seen this happen once before. I'm not watching this again." "It's a bit late to say that, isn't it?" "That's not the point, Gurus. I saw the same thing happen with Sasuke." Those questions egged him on, making him see Itachi dead as the end result. But he never got to ask why his brother had done this, not at first. Gurus frowned. That wasn't right. He had read the history books. He did learn what happened, he protested. "You're not listening." He heard the truth from a secondary source. Sure, he learned the truth, but not hearing it from Itachi made him want to know, and that drove him to go further down that dark road. It took a war and meeting his dead brother to get him off that road. "Wait," the blonde raised a hand to stop him before he could continue. "Don't ask. That's not the point of this conversation. Now you tell me. Do you think that the same thing could have happened to you if you had just shot Sidonis?" The Turian thought hard about the idea. As much as he could have denied it, he liked to believe he was a realist. He had wondered why Sidonis had betrayed the team like he had. But he had always put it down to him being a coward. But perhaps if he had shot Sidonis, those questions would have plagued him. "You might have a point," he finally conceded. "I should hope so. I don't want to see another friend get lost like that again." He eyed the Turian. "I think you owe Eric a big-ass thank you." He chuckled at that. "I think I owe Eric several thank yous at this point." "Several?" He nodded and said, "Yeah, several." "Why haven't you given them to him yet?" "There's always something happening that takes priority. It's the same reason why I've got several thank yous to give to Musashi too." Naruto resisted the urge to hold his head in his hand. Instead he said, "Gurus, go and tell them thank you. They deserve it." "So, is the conversation over?" His father had always taught him to never leave a conversation when it wasn't done. "Have you gotten the point?" "Yes." "Then we're done here." "All right, I'll be going." He turned for the door. It opened before he reached it, and he saw Quan Misli standing on the other side. "Hey, Quan Misli," he said, "you're up?" "Yes, I am," she said back. Naruto looked past the Turian and saw the hunter standing there. She had bandages underneath her shirt that crept around her neck. She had a paleness to her skin that looked a little unhealthy. But still, she looked better than she had in the medical bay. "Do you need something?" Gurus asked her. "I just wished to talk to the commander." He looked back at the blonde and then at her. "Okay. I'll get out of your way." He walked past and headed for the elevator. Neither the shinobi nor the hunter said or did anything for a moment. It wasn't until they heard the elevator's door close that Naruto moved. He didn't walk towards Quan Misli. Instead, he walked over to the office area. He sat down, and it was probably a bit fast when his vision went dark for a second and there was a pain in his head. "Whoa, head rush," he thought to himself. "You're fine, you big baby," Kurama rebuked him. "Now focus on the matter at hand." He didn't the fox to tell him that. He brought his head back up and saw Quan Misli standing at ease in front of his chair. "How are you?" he asked her. "I am good, Commander," she replied. "When did you get out of the medical bay?" "Just today, sir, before you came back to the ship," she answered. "I see. Gaki, would you just talk to the woman? The fox demanded. It's like you're trying to mine for teeth with a pair of pliers. Even though he wanted to ignore him, Naruto could concede that he had a point. The problem was he didn't know what to say. He had been cold and unconcerned about Quan Misli since she got back on board the ship. Dr. Chukwas might have believed that he had become less so, but he had his doubts. Still, the doctor didn't say anything like that without meaning it. Quan Misli broke the silence by saying, "Commander, wait," he told her instantly. She stopped before she said anything. None of the Biju were happy by the move. "Naruto, what the hell?" demanded Sun. "Don't cut her off for no reason," Komi said. "I do have a reason," he rebuked the Kabutomushi, keeping his eyes on the hunter. "Are you able to return to active work now?" She nodded. "I am." "Good, because we could have used you on that last mission." "Which one, sir?" she asked. "I was led to believe that 2 missions happened simultaneously. One was official, the other happened without me noticing until it was too late. Luckily for Gurus and Eric, there was a term for what they did. It was called off the books." She nodded in acknowledgement and left it at that. She knew what he had meant. "I see. May I ask what happened on the official mission that could have required my skills?" "Zaid caused the refinery to go off while trying to catch someone who screwed him over. We got lucky with getting the workers out, but with you, we probably could have stopped the refinery from going." "Thank you for the compliment, sir." He watched her, waiting to see if she would go any further. She fell silent and waited. The silence went on for a good minute before it was broken by Naruto. "You were saying something before?" "Yes." "What was it?" "It's about what happened to Kaden on Vermeer, sir." He frowned a little bit. "I believe that we've already talked about that." "Yes, I know we have." "Then why bring it up again?" "I wish to tell that it had never been my intention to have any of my teammates killed if I was recalled by the Akatsuki. I didn't know when they would do it." Did she think that was supposed to comfort him? Kaden was still dead. "It happened all the same," he told her bluntly. Her eyes were full of restrained emotions. She had been trained well to hold them back like that. "I know it did. There's no excuse I can say or give that could make it any different. I just wanted to say that I am sorry that it did. If I have a chance, I'm going to find K. Lang and kill him for what he did." When she said that, it made him think of his own promise. It was a harsh promise, and one that he made in anger but not unthinking fury. And while Quan Misli hadn't sounded so angry, he knew that she was just as furious about it as he was. "That's going to be a first-come, first-served thing," he said, "because I plan on killing him myself if I get my hands on him." She looked at him with a hint of surprise in her eyes. But that was it. The next words that came out of her mouth were, "Then we shall see who gets to him first." She threw a salute and went for the door. "Quan Misli," he spoke out, making her stop and look back. "You are valuable to the team. In spite of what has been said between us, remember that." "Naruto!" snapped Matatabi. All right, he said back. He didn't need them harping on any more than they already were. "And perhaps I was a bit harsh with you when you came back on." "A bit?" demanded the Nibby. "Take it or leave it." "Commander, you were right to distrust me," Quan Misli told him. "I could see how it would have looked from your eyes. You were right to tell me that I had to earn your trust back. I believe that I still have to." She left without another word. He was standing outside a window in the forest again. But he wasn't looking into a diner and watching old friends talk and eat. Now he was looking into a hospital, at a nurse's station. In fact, he knew this particular station. It was on the 3rd floor of the Konoha Hospital. But there were differences. The machines looked different than from what he remembered, and the uniforms were different too. There were also a lot more phones at the station. Sakura walked up to the station. Her hair was gray and professionally tied back. "Aoi," she said, making one of the nurses turn to face her. She held up a folder. "The patient in room 312, take another look at him." The nurse flinched at the rebuke. "Yes, doctor." She took the folder and scurried away. Naruto was bemused but also confused. Why is she running away like Sakura was about to hit her? All his old teammate did was hold up the folder. "She's probably already got a reputation," Sun suggested. "It must have to do with the War of 3 Flags," Isabu added. "All right," Sakura declared, looking at the rest of the nurses, "what else is there?" She looked at them with a familiar expression. Naruto frowned. He knew that expression. He had seen it before, but it had never appeared on Sakura. It was one Tsunade had worn when she was looking over her patients or lecturing him about hurting himself so badly that he wound up in the hospital. That's probably where she got it. Then where's the old woman? Kurama asked. I don't know. She's usually in the hospital if not being a Hokage. Plus, I don't think she would ever willingly retire. He fell silent as he realized what that meant. Tsunade was dead. She was dead. Even though he knew that she had died long after he had been sealed away, it still hurt to realize that Tsunade, the woman he boasted to that he would become Hokage, was dead. Are you okay? Matatabi asked him. He nodded. Yeah, just give me a moment. You don't have that, the fox said, still watching the scene going on beyond the window. A girl, barely a teenager, was walking up to Sakura. She didn't look injured and neither was she a member of the hospital. She looked at Sakura with a look of naked nervousness. She stopped just before reaching Sakura's personal space. She opened her mouth but nothing came out. One of the nurses saw her. Dr. Uchiha? He said. Sakura's attention snapped to him. What is it? I think that someone is here to see you. She turned around and saw the girl. Her eyes traced over the honey blonde hair that was tied back from the nervous, falling down the body to take in all the information that it told her. Once she had decided that the girl wasn't a threat, she said, Who are you? The girl flinched in surprise. She took several moments to say something. My name is Ira, Lady Sakura, she told her. You've been answering my letters for the past 3 years. Sakura's face showed her recognition. I see. So you're the girl from Midgard who's interested in medicine. Yes, my lady. She rolled her eyes. Don't start with the my lady stuff, I'm too old for that. I'm a doctor and a grandmother. And wife to a clan head, one of the nurses added in a whisper. She whipped her head towards the nurse. What was that? Nothing, doctor, he replied instantly. Geez, she's almost Tsunade when she snaps like that, Naruto thought in disbelief. When they were younger, Sakura would have just gone straight to punching him. It was Tsunade who snapped first and punched later. She looked back at the girl. So, did you want to meet me in person? The girl gulped in air. Yes, but there is something else I want. And that would be what? Your student, she answered, bowing her head in respect. The nurses at the station shared knowing looks and started writing down something on nearby pieces of paper. They were probably taking bets. If that was the case, Sakura must have gotten a lot of requests to take on an apprentice. Naruto found it to be a little funny, actually. Who knew that this would happen? He asked himself. Sasuke probably gets the same thing too. And you will too, once you get back to a human-majority planet for more than a day or two, Kurama said. That was a chilling thought. It made him fall quiet and continue watching. Kid, Sakura said, patiently but not condescendingly, I get a lot of shinobi who want to be my apprentice. I'm not a shinobi, the girl said, cutting her off before she could continue. I'm already a Hliff warrior. Then why do you want to be my apprentice? I don't want to be your apprentice. I want to be your student. Sakura crossed her arms and gave her a long look. It's the same thing, kid. But she shook her head stubbornly. No, it's not. Oh? Then how about you tell me what the difference is between the two? And that's a setup if I ever saw one, Saiken declared. What came next would be just sheer humiliation for the girl. I don't know, Gyuki remarked, watching the girl. She's got a familiar glint in her eye. I think she's going to get out of this trap. What do you mean by glint? Naruto asked him. It's the same glint you get whenever you do something that gets you and your team out of a bad situation. Or when you do something that manages to impress and inspire people. He didn't know he got a glint when he did stuff like that. Do I really? He asked the fox. You're asking me? Kurama replied, making it sound like he was bored. Of course I'm asking you. You've been with me the longest. If any one of you could tell that I get a glint, it would be you. He shrugged his shoulders and lashed his tails lazily in the air. Yes, you get a glint in your eyes. I've just taken it to mean that you're about to do something very stupid. His Jinchuriki scowled at him but said nothing. They both knew that what he had said was true when the blonde had been a fresh genin, and even after he trained with Jiraiya. An apprentice is someone who learns everything that their mentor has to offer them, the girl told Sakura, saying each word carefully like she wanted to make sure that she didn't say them wrong. But a student only learns what he asks for from the teacher. I don't want to be your apprentice, she declared, looking Sakura in the eye. I know who you are, what you can do on the battlefield. I don't want to know how to take lives. I want to know how to save them. Sakura kept her gaze on the girl as she spoke, taking in every word. The nurses behind her looked rather surprised, like they hadn't heard that kind of explanation before. When Ira finished speaking, she fell silent and locked eyes with Naruto's old teammate. She looked like she wanted to say something but forced herself to stay quiet. Sakura broke the silence with a smirk. You got some courage to you, kid. I was wondering when you were going to show up here. She eyed the girl again. So, you said you're a Hliff warrior, HM? Yes, Ira replied. I have been trained to fight. Well, we'll see about that. She walked past her for the corridor. Come on, she called back. Ira looked at the nurses in confusion, and they just shrugged their shoulders. So she looked back at Sakura and asked, What do you mean? Where are we supposed to be going? To the training ground, she answered, I want to see if my apprentice can fight like she says she can. Her eyes widened in realization as she figured out what that meant. She looked back at the nurses, pointing at herself and mouthing, Me? They nodded silently. She turned back and said, I just wanted to be your student. Not your call to make. Sakura shouted back. Now get your ass moving. That made her moving, running down the corridor to catch up to the older woman. Commander, Idi's voice spoke out, bringing him out of his sleep. He sat up, the sheet falling down to pool around his lap. He took a moment to yawn and stretch. What is it, Idi? He asked when he was done, and climbed out of the bed. It's about your request for me to find your old teammate, Tali. I have found her last location, and the Normandy is on its way there. Good. He had questions that needed answering big time. Where is she? Commander, Miranda interrupted over the intercom. I just received a call from the elusive man. He wants to speak with you immediately. He's also told me that this take priority over everything else. In spite of how tempting it was, he did not sigh in irritation. All right, let me get dressed and I'll head down to talk to him. Edi, I'll have to get back to you. Have Joker park the ship while I talk to the elusive man. He didn't get a reply from either the woman or the AI. He hadn't been expecting one. Codex entry, cultures, bathhouses. Most beings acknowledge the importance of personal cleanliness. Humans, especially from the elemental nations and Midgard, put so much value on bathing that it is a part of their culture. For the Midgardians, cleanliness is a very important part of their lives. Prior to the introduction of plumbing into their country, Midgardians had a reputation for being dirty barbarians. This is due to the fact that they only ever bathed once a week on Lordag, Midgardian translation, washing day, which was always a Saturday, which in turn was caused by Midgard's naturally cold climate. This is also the case with the elemental nations and the frontier, except for the fact that both cultures put more of an emphasis on cleanliness that they bathe whenever they get the opportunity. In any case, humans have such an emphasis on bathing that they have always included public baths and bathhouses as a social gathering place, particularly for therapeutic effects, or for when their own personal bathrooms need to be repaired. Such places are often built on a hot spring of water to save on money, or even add a bit of nature to the scenery, but some make use of plumbing to pipe in hot water when a hot spring is unavailable. To ensure the possibility of more profits, these places can include spa treatment if they are large enough. Bathhouses and public baths are considered the prime location for secure verbal talks, as everybody who walks into a bath is expected to go in naked, especially by criminal elements. For this reason, as well as rumors of therapists raping bathgoers, they were banned in the frontier at the time, until a public outcry at the lack of hygiene, particularly at the fact that the plumbing system was still being perfected at the time. This forced King Benjamin ex veto reopen them under the condition that proper screening of all bathhouse employees be conducted for illegal activity. Still, the human-run bathhouse is considered a prime location for those looking to simmer their troubles away with a dip in hot water. It is a particularly popular destination with diplomats of all races, especially when one desires the spa treatment as well. Among all races, humans and Asari are among the higher numbers of bathgoers that attend these places, along with Turians, Solarians, and some Krogan. To accommodate for clean freak customers, and especially the special needs of Quarian patrons, these places offer a specially made sanitized section.